Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Welcome. Yeah. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Monday, November 10th. We are just 313 days into the new year. It's almost over. Live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in sunny downtown Burbank, California for KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your so humble host, Jimmy Church. How is everybody doing tonight? I'm ready. Sandbox is ready. Let's get this one cracking. Yeah. All right. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around this great planet. Everybody that is defending this Constitution, our right to free speech. This very show, think about that. As you tweet, as you text, as you listen to this program, somebody sacrificed. Think about that. Podcast will be updated tonight after the show. We were an episode short last week, as everybody knows. Had to field that email. You know what's funny? Before we get moving, the amount of email that I have received over the last 4 days, extraordinary. And of course, today, I don't even know. It's a lot. But out of all of that email, 99.9%, all cool, all good. That little teeny tiny sliver, the 2 out of thousands that, just had to say something negative, whatever. But then out of all of that, I got to tell you, I got so much email about YouTube. Hey, Jimmy, you're doing good. Whatever. Where's my YouTube, pal? What's up with YouTube? YouTube. I opened up more YouTube email. It makes me feel good. You care. That's all that matters. Welcome. This is Fade to Black. Faders.org. Friday night, went over, got to hang out with everybody through all the drama, but forget about that. That's we'll never talk about that ever again. But through all of that, we got to get together on Friday night. We watched, I didn't get a chance. I missed the movie. But we all hung out. Fader Cinema, which was Don Peyote, was the feature film of the evening. Great choice, by the way. And I was able to just hang out with everybody, all you faders. And we got a little dirty, didn't we? I like my chat rooms dirty. I like my chat rooms a little smelly. And that's exactly what we did. Did we have great fun on Friday night? Thank you for that. It was an awesome time. And it's a good thing that, we can't publish pics in a chat room. And also, the chat room that Methods got set up over there is it so reminded me of the internet of 20 years ago. It was pretty funny, pretty cool. I hadn't been in a real chat room like that, and I don't even know. Man, AOL 2.1. It's been a long time. And it was awesome. It was really, really cool. And we had a great time. So anyway, faders.org, that website is absolutely incredible. We had a great time. So Friday night, I don't know what we're going to do this Friday as far as a movie goes, but, we really need to pick out something really cool. And we will do that. And whatever the suggestions are, get it over to the method, post it here, post it on Twitter, shoot me an email, whatever. We'll figure something out for Friday night. But that was a great time. And I just got to say, everybody's going, yep. And all of you on Twitter right now, all of you Fader Knots, you know what I'm talking about. That was fun. So if you haven't been over to faders.org, go check it out. And there you go. Okay, so let's get this show cracking. I want to thank everybody for your support last night. It was great. And but tonight is Monday, and tonight it's about Fade to Black and the Dark Matter Radio Network. That's where we are tonight. We've got a great show lined up. Dr. Carmen Boulter will be with us. The Pyramid Code DVD series. Also, it was on public television, and I was probably on all of the major networks and around the world, all the country. It's a great series of DVDs. And she will be joining us at the bottom of the hour from Victoria, Canada. Looking forward to that. All right. So let's have a nice, great, awesome, stress-free show. It's all about you. Never forget that. All right. Today, let's get this show cracking. Let's go. I'm back in the saddle. I'm here. Squeaky chair and all. Did you hear that? During the break, I'll break out the WD-40. We'll get rid of that. See, now it's not doing it. I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. All right. Today, bassist Greg Lake, that's right, of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, is 67 years old. Guns N' Roses guitarist DJ Ashba, 42. Plays Les Paul. He's pretty good. Sinbad today is 58. And our okay, focus. You guys are killing me. You guys are killing me. Should I read some of this on the air? Be funny if the chair broke live on the air. Oh, that would just be hilarious. I wouldn't doubt it that it would happen one day. Our dead guy's birthday today is actor Roy Scheider. Born in 1932, died in 2008 at the age of 75. I didn't realize that he was that old when he passed away. I mean, he lived a great life and everything, and certainly, one of the great film careers of anybody. But I just didn't. Roy was with us for so many years and did it to the end where I just didn't realize he was 75. Man, I mean, I thought he was younger than that. But 75 years old, born in 32, died in 08, the age of 75, which brings me to our first Twitter question of the night. You ready? What is Scheider's best movie? And trust me on this, he's made some great ones. I mean, when there's great, there's great. Roy's been right there. So what's his great movie? Is it Jaws? Like the timing of that. Is it Jaws? Nancy Nurse just popped in. Sorry for being late. Go stand in the corner, Nancy. Tardy pass. There you go. Jaws. Okay. Yeah, I've got two. Nancy Nurse comes in with the right answer. Ding, 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 ding. All that jazz. But there is an honorable mention here. One that I need to get some clothes on. One that we haven't mentioned. Sequest. Listen. 2010. Now, wait. Before everybody freaks out, what? Listen, 2010 was a great movie. French Connection was I was going there. French Connection, Jonas, always coming in a little late, but right on the money, Scorpio. French Connection, one of the best car chases ever, too, as well, and some great, I love watching old film, the quality of film. But Scheider, I want to do an honorable mention for 2010. Ken Lipson said, if you say 2010, I'm going to pass out. Let me defend the film for a second. Okay? Let me defend the film. The Roy being Roy at the beginning and the interaction with his son and his wife and his family, I thought was a great setup for the film. The stuff that went down between Russia and the United States and how that was dealt with in the film, I thought was really good. And Roy acting, his acting on the ship as they were getting out, they were on the Leonov, I think. They were on a Russian ship heading out to Jupiter. I thought that they did as good as they can do with the script that they had and the fight that they had to get the film done. Okay, and I thought it had a good ending. I thought the film really stood on its own. If there was no 2001 and if just 2010 came out by itself, it's a great film. But we always have that barometer of 2001. But I thought Roy shined in 2001. I really did. I think the movie starts out great, and I think it ends great. So there you go. Now, of course, everybody's going to say Jaws, and you can't deny him on that. I am an all that jazz kind of guy. That movie was that's one of those movies where you get the script and you're thankful. You're just like, I got to do this. This is a movie, and All That Jazz was all that. So I think All That Jazz was his best flick. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You want to come out and hang out with us in the sandbox? That is hashtag DMRadioNet. Hashtag DMRadioNet. That's what you want to do. Come hang out with us. We will bust through. Everybody's friendly. Everybody's nice. Everybody gets along. The Fadernauts is a great family. Come hang out with us. And I promise, we will be gentle. It's a good Blue Thunder? You didn't, Robert? No. I saw that at a drive-in. Blue Thunder. Tonight we have guest Dr. Carmen Boulter will be with us. The Pyramid Code, amongst other things. Tomorrow, Jason Martell will be here. Look at that. Jason's going to come hang out with us. Well, Jason and I, we were talking over the weekend. We're like, you know what? Let's just talk about everything. I said, good. Let's do that. And let's see if we can make Mike Barra call in. We'll force him to call in to the show. Mike, you know what I'm talking about. And I know you're listening. Shall we open up the lines tonight? Shall we? Well, we'll leave that up with Carmen Boulter. And I would like to do that. So if we can, we will. The call-in number, as always, is 323-825-5045. You can email throughout the show. I'll get to as many of the emails as I can. As always, I try to write back. It's going to take me a couple of months to get back to everybody after this weekend, but I will eventually. Don't worry. I read them all, certainly. You can email Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can go over to the website, go to the contact page, go to jimmychurchradio.com, go to the contact page, and do so in confidence if you're scared, where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. This is Fade to Black. I am so happy to be back here with my friends tonight. If you have any questions for me directly during the show, you can hashtag F2BQ. That is F2BQ. In TweetDeck, that is the lone column. Robert Knoll says, we're going to let last night go. Thanks for one hell of a show last night, Jimmy says. Is it working tonight? Yes, everything is cool. Everything is happening. Everything is great. This is Fade to Black only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Got some new listeners tonight? I'm sure we do. You haven't experienced this yet? You know what? Turn off the lights. My studio is dark. Get comfortable. We're about to go on another journey. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, you have tuned into the latest phenomenon in late night talk radio, Fade to Black, starring the inimitable Jimmy Church, showcasing his continuing quest in pursuit of knowledge of the strange and paranormal. Sit back, open your mind, and let's get cracking.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Bespoke Radio for the masses. I am your humble host tonight. Oh, humble host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dr. Carmen Boulter, the Pyramid Code, will be with us in just a few short minutes. All right, look, I'm going to make one little statement. I'm going to make this really brief just for everybody. I'm watching it go down on Twitter. I have stayed silent all weekend, all day. I have not posted. I have not responded. I have not said a thing. I will say this. There are maybe five individuals that were privy to all conversations. 4 of those 5 have not said anything publicly. One has. That was their choice, but that's it. So anything that you have read, anything that you have heard, any other host, anybody that has said anything on any other program, anybody on any website, any forum, anywhere on the net or any, I don't care, doesn't know anything. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody knows anything. Now, people are going to say what they want. They're going to theorize. They're going to conjecture. And that's the great thing about being in the United States. It's freedom of speech. But everything will remain private. Are we clear? Okay? It's all good in the hood. And I thank every Fade or Not, every listener of this show, everybody out there for your support. You know who you are. but it's all good. Remember, things are never, ever, ever what they seem. Always remember that. Always. You've heard me say it a million times. With that, can we have some fun now? Can't we just have some fun? Isn't this supposed to be fun? That's it, man. Let's just, can't we all just get along? Can't we just, all right? I'm in a great mood. I didn't get up today until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I slept like a friggin' baby, and that's it. Okay? I woke up this morning. I woke up after a few hours sleep. I woke up at about 10 o'clock, and you guys know, whoever saw me favorite some tweets or like something on Facebook, I did that from my phone in bed with one eye open, and I woke up at 4 o'clock with my cell phone on my chest. Okay? That's it. So here I am tonight. I'm in a great mood. I'm just so glad to be hanging out with everybody tonight. Okay, so that's it. It's all good. Can we just have some fun? Let's get this cracking. Let me get to some email. Let's get to some news. And here we go. Email from Phil. He said, I just wanted to, now this was one of literally, and I'm not joking and not exaggerating, hundreds, if not thousands of emails that came in. Okay? And this was just an arbitrary pick, but it was good, and it kind of sums up everything else. I just wanted to tell you, I have never heard of you before, as we don't have Fade to Black here in Minneapolis, but I enjoyed last night's show. George picked a good stand-in. I recorded the show from online with Goldwave and archived it to keep. Oops, did I just say that? Good one. Thanks for being there. Now, I know about Fade to Black online, and I have a new source to pursue. Nice. By the way, I am an eyewitness to a UFO above my birthplace home, Baltimore, in 1955 as a kid. That sums it up. Grabbed a new listener, a new Fadernaut, and that's all that I care about. Phil, thank you for that email. This email is from Cindy. She says, about 2 years ago, this guy intercepted this on his cell phone. Sounds close to what you played on your show. And it's called Alien Communication Interception Invasion Imminent on YouTube by Jonathan Kleck. Sorry, I couldn't get the link in because it was sent to me by her cell phone. So I'm going to ask all of you friendly Fadernauts out there. Jonathan Kleck, it's called Alien Communication Interception Invasion Imminent on YouTube. Grab that link. Post it. I want to check it out. Okay? And I will do that later on tonight. This email came in from King B. And I got to say, this one made me laugh. And to the point, spot on the money. King B says, weren't you in a 50s doo-wop group called the Co-Hosters? Ba-dum-bum. Well done, King B. Oh, that was the bright spot in my day today. Thank you for that. Keep the guest requests coming. Carmen tonight is because of you. Well, you know what? I've been a Carmen fan for a long time. I would have eventually just avoided the temptation, just finally just went for it and got her on the show. She is great. The Pyramid Code, those 5 DVDs are extraordinary. I have no idea how many times I have watched them, not only individually. I think there's a YouTube video out there. It's like 10 hours long that's got them all back to back. But it is a great series. She'll be joining us tonight, and she is a guest request. Think about that. All right, let's get to some news. What happened to Ebola? That's been my headline all last week. I'm certainly not changing today. Why? I went over to CNN.com, since we don't have CNN here at the studio anymore, and we don't have it over at the house for obvious reasons. Wait for those guys to, they need to start playing together. But anyway, what happened to Ebola? So over on CNN, these are the headline stories in order. Net neutrality, cold weather, the Bahamas crash, Ferguson, the Rosetta Comet landing, Led Zeppelin, and the Postal Service breach. Not one peep of Ebola. And I got to say, it wasn't 30 days ago. The world was coming to an end. It's mind-blowing. More on this tomorrow. I'm going to really dig. Oh, man. Did I get a swag bag? No, I didn't get a swag bag, Keith. That's pretty funny. What did I just say? Things are never what they seem, brother. Ever. No, they treated me good over there. All right. In a public statement today, Obama took a firm stand and said he wants the internet to be like a utility. No more internet fast lanes. Obama said his approach is to look at the internet like a utility and to treat companies like AT&T, Comcast, the same as your local power company. That would forbid broadband providers from blocking legal websites or keep websites in a slow lane until they pay up an extra fee. The FCC had proposed earlier this year that Amazon could pay Comcast to speed up service for its customers. Opponents fear that a smaller Amazon rival would not be able to compete. I spoke about this so loudly. Why is it important? Listen to me. This show, just imagine if we got cranked down because I didn't fork up some money. Keith didn't fork up some money so we could keep this show on the air, or we get swallowed up by another internet network. It's not fair. That's not what the internet was set up to be. I'm quoting Obama here. He says, we cannot allow the internet service providers to restrict the best access or to pick winners and losers in an online marketplace for services and ideas. He went on to say, companies who connect you to the world have a special obligation not to exploit the monopoly they enjoy over access in and out of your home and business. End quote. That's right. Now, this isn't a political show, but when you're right, you're right. Did you hear about this today? Check this out. According to the UK Daily Mirror, Led Zeppelin, I can't even. Okay, hold on. Supposedly, Robert Plant got up at a press conference and tore up a contract that was worth $800 million, $300 million to him if Led Zeppelin got together and went on tour for Virgin. That was put together by Richard Branson, this tour. However, and it's all over the internet, and you know me. I'm wearing my Good Luck Led Zeppelin 1977 tour shirt right now in the studio. However, Plant's publicist told the UK Guardian that the Mirror report was rubbish. Where do we stand with this? Is it just about clicks once again? Check this out today. South Korean soldiers fired warning shots at a patrol from North Korea to turn it back from the two sides border. About 10 North Korean soldiers approached the military demarcation line around 9:40 a.m. today. And that's it. They did a warning broadcast, which was like, did a warning broadcast. They fired about 20 rounds of warning shots, and the North Koreans, who didn't return fire, turned and ran. And that is your news from around the world today. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. After the break, right now, Dr. Carmen Boulter will be joining us live live from Victoria, Canada. Tomorrow, Jason Martell. Wednesday, Paul Moeller will be back with us. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We will be back right after this. Stay with us.
Are you afraid of the dark? Don't move. Don't touch that mouse. You are listening to Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Let's get this show cracking. I'm excited. Welcome to everybody listening across the United States and all around the world, and of course, our good friends to the Great White North. Dr. Carmen Boulter is director, producer, and writer of The Pyramid Code, a 5-episode documentary series that has aired on national TV in 38 countries and is on Netflix all around the world. Carmen has been involved in all aspects of the vision and development of InteractiveU.com, an online and social action network. Carmen was founder and director of the Women's Therapy and Research Center in Calgary, Canada. She's the author of the groundbreaking book, Angels and Archetypes, an evolutionary map of feminine consciousness. I would like to humbly welcome to the program, live from Victoria, Canada, Dr. Carmen Boulter. Carmen, doctor, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, Jimmy.
How are you? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm great, thanks.
Now, if you don't mind, can we go with Carmen? I'll stay with doctor, but what are you comfortable with?
Carmen's just fine.
Okay. Let's, this show, and welcome to the program. This show is an open-ended conversation with no agenda. I don't have questions in front of me. And we're just going to start where we start. We're going to end where we end. I'm going to pick your brain, and you're more than welcome to pick mine. Good luck with that. But in the end, if you and I find this interesting, so will everybody else. And let's inform and enlighten and take some people on a journey tonight. What do you say?
Great.
All right. First off, I have to say, and the series Pyramid Code, and I said it in the opening of the show tonight, and I've said it to you. I don't know how many times I have watched them. It's one of my fallback documentary series when I'm surfing around YouTube and I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm done looking. Let's just go back and watch the Pyramid Code again. That's what I do. And that is something to be very proud of. But let's kind of start there. What got you into Giza and the magic that has been going on there for millennia?
Well, I started getting interested in Egypt when I was a little girl, and I went there for the first time in 1977, and then went on my merry way and didn't go back till 94. But the whole time I was investigating all things Egyptian. And then I was going to do my PhD in archaeology, and they, you can't change the storyline that they offer with the mainstream. So I decided that I'd go to another country and teach abroad. So I ended up at a university in Taiwan for 4 years, and I did 3 international academic cooperation projects, which bought me all kinds of equipment, and an HD video camera and a tripod was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I used it to make video tutorials for my students because I was teaching online. And then I thought, well, if I could make short videos, why can't I make a long one? So I decided to do the Pyramid Code. Part of it was because Indigenous wisdom keeper Hakim, Aoyan, was getting quite old, and no one had ever captured his wisdom. And so I decided that that was the ticket, and my mandate for myself in the series was to find scientists that corroborated what he said. So he said some pretty far-out things, and he knew it because he knew it, but he wasn't in the business of trying to prove it, as academia often requires us to do. And so since the Pyramid Code's been finished, I have 9 hours of Hakim. More science has come out that explains more of what he's done. So I am looking toward a second series.
Before we, I don't want to let you get away from something that you just said, which I think is an important thing to drive home. When you mentioned that you had to change colleges, you had to change schools because academia maybe wasn't creative enough. Is that the best way to put it? That was when it comes to Egypt?
Well, worse than that. There was it was University of Calgary, actually, that the dean invited me to apply because of my background in Egypt. And years before, they had a professor who had a really big budget, and so he had filled the library with all kinds of interesting ancient Egyptian texts. So I took an interest, and they invited me to apply to do my PhD. But it wasn't long before. And I actually had gone to Cairo University and gotten the approval of the associate dean of the Faculty of Archaeology there to supervise my research in Egypt. But then I realized if I didn't just repeat the old story,
right,
they wouldn't let me publish. So I thought, I can keep my interest, but I need to go a different route because I really didn't agree that the pyramids were tombs and they're built for the ego of pharaohs and that they worshipped animals and were obsessed with death and all those things they tell you in school.
Right.
So I thought, I can't just put myself in a position to have to repeat the wrong story. So I decided to take a full stop, and off I went to Taiwan.
And these rumors and myths that do go around in this subject when we're talking about Egypt, and I'm referring to Orthodox academia and their apparent closed-mindedness. Bear in mind, I don't have a PhD. I'm not an Egyptologist. I haven't gone to Cairo University. But I hear the stories that you're referring to now. And is it the same everywhere you go when it comes to this? As soon as you try to step out of the norm or try to explore something, you're just denied?
Yes, and not just with Egypt. I mean, there is a rhetoric, there is a narrative that our culture wants us to believe. And, if we step outside of the line, they call us a conspiracy theorist, which is a catch-all phrase that somebody actually coined so that everyone else would stay within the narrative. And so I think that that's an issue that we're all facing in these changing times.
Well, and you're fighting the good fight for this. And we'll move on from this subject, but I am completely fascinated with it. And I deal with this every day on this show, too, with researchers like yourself. But is there hope? Is there hope? Can we change the orthodoxy? Is there anything that we can do?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't want to be too pat about it because I see that anytime you try to say something different, there are certain people that just don't want that. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious.
Right.
Unconscious. And so I imagine standing on an area rug and everyone else that agrees is standing there as well, the populace. And if somebody steps off the carpet, everybody panics and tries to pull them back on. So it is a well-entrenched, 5,000-year-old patriarchal imperative to follow along. And yes, there's hope because I held the Pyramid Code near and dear to my heart and didn't let any networks change it to make it untrue. And so I got some 14,000 letters from people saying, "Oh my God, I know this is right," and my daughter had a dream, and and they just felt such a resonance. But if you watch TV, what it's doing is cognitive dissonance. So you'll hear a contradiction, you'll hear something that doesn't feel right, and next thing you know, once your brain is scrambled, they put a product in front of you to buy, and you kind of go, "Oh," and that is the methodology of consumerism.
Has Zahi seen or commented on the Pyramid Code?
No, he has not. I, of course, needed to get his permission to do any of it.
Right.
And no, he has not.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, how did you get it done? You had to go and get the permission to do the filming. Did you tell them what it was actually about, or did you play the straight card?
Well, yes, sort of. I said it was academic, which of course it is, and it was for my students because I'm a professor. But there's a deeper story in there. Have you ever heard of The Champion?
Yes. Okay. You know what? This is a free speech show, Carmen. So let it go. Tell me about it.
So the Champion's name was Hefnawi, and he as a young, he was born right beside the pyramid. And Fayed, Dodi Fayed's great uncle or something, not second cousin, but the last generation. There's 2,000 cousins in that family. Princess dies Dodi, and their family moved to Alexandria and then on to London. And the Champion's family stayed right beside the Sphinx in front of the pyramid. And as a young man, it wasn't restricted then. There was no fence up or wall. And so he used to run up the pyramid in 4 minutes and down in 3. So the Guinness Book of World Records called him the Champion, and that stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I befriended the family. And one day I was living over in the village in front of the Sphinx, and a little boy came and said, "Champion wants to have tea with you tomorrow. Come at 2:00.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I knew him. That was not unusual to sit with him. The elders love to talk to somebody who was interested in what they knew. And so I showed up, and tea was ready, and he said, "Tomorrow I'm taking you to Zahi." And I'm like, "Really?" And he wouldn't tell me why. I'm not going to push the issue. So the next day off, we went up to the Department of Antiquities on the plateau. And Zahi was all gruff, and he said, "What do you want?" And he says, Are you into all those conspiracies? And I said, "Well, I'd like to see the pre-restoration pictures of the Sphinx that are the Berets collection." And he'd say, "What else? I'm not showing you that. I don't have it." And then I just was a technique and assertiveness training as broken record. So every time he asked me what I wanted, I said I wanted to see so I must have said it over and over like 6 times. So finally he just pulled the top drawer on the left-hand side of his desk and pulled them out and put them in front of me. He had them right there. So then he turns to Champion, and who was old by then, like, wrinkled up face and everything. And Champion used to have the keys to the pyramid when Zahi came along as a junior archaeologist. And so Champion was actually Zahi's boss for many years. And Zahi worked his way up and did his master's. He had his bachelor's at the time, and he worked up and got his master's and then his PhD. And then the whole thing changed, and the keys were taken from the Champion, and then Zahi was in charge of everything. So I didn't know what Champion was going to say, and so he said, "Well, I used to be your boss, and I'm not going to be around forever, so after everything we've been through, I have something that I am going to request." And Zahi went, "Well, what?" It was really gruff. I mean, it was like, wow, what's this guy about? I had met him before, but I mean, I just really couldn't believe how...
He was being standoffish?
Well, being quite gruff is the word.
Okay.
Anyway, so the Champion said, "Okay, anything she asks you, you say yes."
Wow.
So I just about fell off my chair.
Yeah.
And he did. I went and sat in his office sometimes for whole days. Well, he said he'd see me, and then I was the last appointment, and I got there at 10 in the morning, and he didn't see me till 5:30. But that meant I got to, hear his secretaries chatting and see who came and went in the office and all that, so I didn't mind at all. But he signed an order for a carte blanche permit for me to film at any site that was open, except all the watchmen are there to say no, and nobody ever gets those permits, and I had to pay for it as well.
Right.
And it was all Arabic and stamped, and I had to go to 4 different offices to get it all approved. And it said exactly on it that I could film anywhere. And at Saqqara, the chief inspector there threw it on the desk and said, "How do I know it's not fake?" And so after paying like $3,000 to film inside the pyramid of Titi, where the pyramid texts are, they gave me 1 minute to film.
So
for $3,000 with a permit.
I've seen that scene so many times, and you go up and you show the hieroglyphics on the side. You're saying you were only there for 1 minute?
Well, we forced the issue, and I complained a bit, and we ended up getting 4.5 maybe.
Oh, man.
But that was and Hakim came with me to a lot of the shoots, and the only time I was ever hauled off to the police station was when I had the permit.
Those hieroglyphics at Tiki, those are all outside? Or are there any inside?
No. They're inside a chamber. And it's a more recent pyramid because it's got, it does have a sarcophagus in it and hieroglyphics. So it's not from the pre-dynastic era, which has been badly dated in traditional Egyptology. But that's the thing that I'm really sensitive to is recent, medium, and old.
Can you read hieroglyphics? I know that you've said before that you can't. I mean, have you learned?
Well, I've studied it, but the thing is that pretty much everybody who, Wallace Budge and all these different people who have studied and made the translations started with Champollion's translation of the Rosetta Stone, which had Demotic, Greek, and hieroglyphic. But he was hesitating. This is in the Pyramid Code. He knew there was something wrong with the translation, but the other thing is we're so arrogant that we say, well, this is an A and this is a B, but there's 4,000 hieroglyphs, not 26 letters. And so when people get their name written in hieroglyphic, that's surely fabricated. And as anything in Egypt, any artifact, any fresco, any hieroglyphic, there's multiple layers of meaning. And they were very clever. And so the hieroglyphic, I've come to see, are really the electric universe, symbols for quantum physics, cosmology, and I've come to understand them that way. And there's actually a man called Tim Williams who is a physicist, electric universe person, and he's approached me, to look at his work, and I feel deep in myself that he's got it.
I remember a couple of years ago, I have over at my house, I've got some reproductions of different objects from Giza. And in the Pyramid Code where you show the alphabet, right, and hieroglyphics, I was like, okay, all right. I went to go and I thought, you know what, I'm going to decipher some of this stuff. I got nowhere.
Exactly. No, exactly, because it's not typical. So I studied the traditional stuff, which I did. I read every old book I could find more than once, probably 3 times. And I would just feel sick when I read certain things. And I thought, it can't be. So I was always guided, and I always knew when something was wrong because I just have such a visceral reaction. So I studied and went to international conferences and listened to all the guys who were, debating about, what the symbols were. And maybe they stumbled upon a few symbols that are valid, but only on one level, and so much of the rest of it's wrong because I don't know what's going on. Like, even since I've been studying it, there's so much more science that's come out that helps us understand what the Egyptians were leaving for us.
Can you give me an example of that, things that you were looking at and found that maybe it was correct or incorrect?
Well, one of the things to me that's absolutely fascinating, because I went all over Egypt over and over again, photographed everything, poured over my photographs when I got back home. I lived over there several times. I had the Hall of Records Retreat Center right in front of the third pyramid that slept 12, and so I lived there for a while. And Blue Lotus became very interesting to me because I had a past life memory of us using it as some kind of a tonic, a hallucinogenic. It was more of a breathe it, but aromatherapy. So I was quite curious about the Blue Lotus. And then poring over my pictures one day, I went, oh, look how many times the Blue Lotus stem is wrapped around a wine jar. I wonder if they're trying to tell us something. And so there's a YouTube video. I figured all this out before I saw the YouTube video, but it's called Sacred Weed, Blue Lily, and Blue Lotus is almost extinct. We've located some now, but and so that's not the same thing. But they did some experiments where they actually found and cultivated some bulbs of the blue lily, and then they recruited two people who signed their life away that if anything happened to them, it wasn't their fault. They didn't know each other, a man and a woman in England, and they cultivated the Blue Lotus. They did tests to see if there was some kind of psychotropic reaction with wine, And then they soaked a flower in wine, a jug each, and overnight. And they did all these hand-eye coordination tests and all kinds of different psychic experiments, and and then they gave them a little glass of wine, like half a glass of what you'd get in a restaurant. And then you got the camera on them, and the two of them are sitting there going, I don't feel anything. Do you feel anything? No, I don't feel anything. And then all of a sudden they go, oh, both at the same time, I feel so good. Just a total scream. Oh, my God. Anyway, so...
I'm writing the recipe down, just so you know. I just
okay.
I wrote that down.
And then they did the hand-eye coordination tests, and they were better, and the psychic tests, and they were better. And, they asked them how they felt physically in their body, and it seems, I call it hormone food. It seems that it gives a sense of centeredness, deep centeredness, and sensualness at the same time, and alertness. And so when it's over, and what they would do is eat the flower. But when you see the dancing scenes when the girls are wearing chiffon and a thong and their bodies, and then they've got these head dresses with a big blue lotus at their crown chakra. Well, that was for later as the party moved on. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my God, they were just having a fabulous time, and we're just so uptight about everything. But I don't think of it as a drug because there's nothing synthetic about it. Like, sugar and cocaine and heroin are all made the same way to, boil things down so that the crystals are left, and then they rob the body, and then you drop after you have it.
Right.
And then it's addictive. But this, to me, is a hormone. It stimulates the hormones in some way.
Well, Carmen, I have to ask, did you try it yourself?
Yes.
And
they're exactly right. But the lily is milder. And, my friend said, oh, they did it with white wine. I'm like, no. And so most of the hypotheses that I, started at me out doing my research came from some kind of strong past life recall. And then I'm like running around Egypt trying to find something to ground that, or do some kind of a study to see, am I right or not? Is it true? Is it verifiable? So, yes, they make a tincture, and of course nobody's figured out to make it illegal because nobody knows anything about it. But I guess the cat's out of the bag now that I'm telling you.
Yes, it is. and Twitter's already lit up. They're already talking about it. Brew your own. This is from Cortana. She says, brew your own Blue Lotus, lily beer, or wine, and then give us Fate or Not's a sample. That's interesting. And concerning the Lotus with the famous Dendera light bulbs and its connection with that, I know that you've been there, and I know that you've looked at the light bulbs and the electric cables and all of that. What do you think when you're down there in Dendera and you take a look at that? When you have the myth and the legend, and then you have the orthodoxy. And I hate to repeat myself, but it's what we're always dealing with. What's your take on that when you're down there? What's your feeling?
Well, first of all, they're all over the place upstairs too, but I don't think anybody's tripped over that or noticed them because they're way up high in one of the rooms. So they're not just down in the crypt. It's dark down there. There's a temple underneath, and then there's the temple on top. So there's a place where you can see the tops of the pillars. So it most assuredly was older, just like the Osirian is below, and the ceiling of it would have been, well, not the ceiling, but the height of the ceiling would have been the floor of the Temple of Seti at Abydos.
Right.
Except they're beside each other, and they're not on top. So at Dendera, they're on top. Okay. The symbol of the Blue Lotus is fresh water and feminine consciousness. And so you'll see there's a head of King Tut in the National Museum, and it's like he's being birthed out of the Blue Lotus. So that's a symbol of him coming from the sacred feminine, from the womb, which was something that they symbolized a lot because they were concerned about biology, how we got here, and cosmology, what happened before we got here and after we left, right? So they were really on it about that. So if you're going to boil ancient Egyptian mysticism down, those are the two main things. So anytime you see a lotus, it's symbolizing fresh water, which of course we need to live, and feminine consciousness, okay? But it's a source of energy and it's a source of life, okay? So there's different ways to interpret it. You also see the Jed, which is a symbol of the masculine, which is the spinal cord of Osiris.
Right.
And it's the stripes with the
bars. Yeah, the bars.
Yeah, the bars across. And so you see that. So and then the arms outstretched like two L's is a symbol for the Ka, which is the body double. So they're talking about joining masculine and feminine consciousness, creating the serpent energy, and somehow containing it with the Blue Lotus at the base. So to me, they're saying we have harnessed how to blend feminine and masculine energy to birth something through fresh water, which is life. Now, that's one way of interpreting it, but at the Conference on Precession and Ancient Knowledge, Walter Crettenden's conference a couple of years ago, Jason Martell, I see he's been on your show, he actually made one of these and fueled it with orange juice or something, and they turned all the lights out in the auditorium, and there was a faint glow, so he turned it into a light bulb. So, I mean, you can interpret anything the way you want, but I always want to break down the symbols, translate what the symbols are into words, and make a new sentence or paragraph.
With Dendera, and this is just me asking you directly, it's more of an emotional thing, is that just like the most fantastic complex there? I mean, as far as its construction and its messages, and I know it's a feminine temple too as well, but it just looks so absolutely amazing and breathtaking when you're up top.
Oh, yeah. And it's really far from the Nile. So just the way cities are usually built on a river, it would have been built close to the shores of the Nile. And it's old. And then, of course, the Christians came and did things, and the Ptolemaic period did things. But I think it's just the way Abydos, but it doesn't have nearly as much. But the frescoes are bigger, if you will. Well, I mean, there's stuff all over all the temples. But, you know, it's basically a resurgence of the mysticism, and someone was remembering. And there was a lot of misinterpretation when they were bringing things from the distant past. And, of course, at Dendera, the ceiling in the first hypostyle hall looked like looking into a cup of espresso coffee.
Sure.
It was that dark with soot and fungus, mold, whatever stuff, because the Christians just built mud huts outside and used the temples, if you can believe it, as barns, and they didn't like mucking out the animals, and so they just let everything get putrid in there, and then they'd burn it, and that's how the ceiling. Yeah, it's so sacrilegious, it's ridiculous. And then they spent their day sharpening their chisels and taking off all the body parts to deface the temple. They spent years doing that.
Yeah. When I look at films and you look at all the faces and all the, all the references were, removed. I mean, how dare you? Well, I know it's ignorance. I get that. I do. But, oh, man, they just ruined it for us completely.
Well, not completely, because what I did, as soon as I learned Photoshop in 1994, I took pictures of all the Hathor faces in that first hypostyle hall, and it's only Hathor that gets a temple pillar to herself. Everything else is lotus and papyrus.
Right.
A few slight exceptions, but she's 3D, and everybody else is in profile, so it's like she's from the fourth dimension, and the Hathors are, Tom Kenyon's said plenty about them. Anyway, so I took pictures of all the faces, and then loaded them into the computer and found a perfect right ear and a perfect left ear and a perfect this part of the face and a perfect this part, and I put the face back together.
Right on.
Then I felt better.
Do you have that published anywhere?
Probably, but that was way back when.
That sounds fun to look at.
I can make it again.
Yeah, you should. You should send it to me. I would love to see it. Now, a couple of things, and we're at the top of the hour here. Let me just get a quick, this is Fade to Black.
Goodness.
I know. Isn't it great? This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. We are talking with Dr. Carmen Boulter, director, producer, writer. What else didn't you do on the Pyramid Code? You didn't do the editing, but you did everything else.
I did some editing, and I did some filming as well.
Did you really? Now,
well, if the videographers didn't get the shot, I went back and got the shot.
Now, when you again, this is just a fanboy asking you. When you're out there, is it just you and a cameraman, basically, and maybe a sound guy, and that's it?
No, I've traveled with big crews.
You travel with big crews as well.
I bring the crews from New York, and the videographer always wants an assistant because they're doing talk and walk, and they're going backwards and don't trip over the camel.
Right. Well, because it's got a really cool which I think is the essence of cool documentaries too, by the way. It's got a real guerrilla feel to it, is what I'm trying to say. You know, you guys are just out there sneaking around. I didn't realize you had a full crew with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Now, okay, let's
and
talk.
we were out sneaking around.
I know you had to be. I know. It is, like I said. And, those scenes with Hakim, by the way, I would love to see the rest of those, and you need to get all of that out. I'm glad you preserved it, because the way that he speaks and how he speaks with his knowledge, I'm going to say this. I can't think of a better word. It's frightening, okay? It's scary. He is so smart, but yet this isn't the mainstream, and his knowledge is not what you read in books. And if you hadn't have preserved it, we wouldn't have it.
No, that's right. But the other thing is that he wouldn't tell me. I studied with him for 10 years. I considered him to be my mentor over there. And every day I didn't have a group with me. I went and visited him. And I'd say, well, what about this and what about this? And he wouldn't tell me anything until I already knew. And then went, does this and Nefertiti and Agnon, and then he'd go, yeah, and then he wouldn't stop talking for 3 days.
Right.
But he wouldn't tell me anything unless I already knew it.
And
I'd see him when there were people there that didn't have the ears to hear it. And he would talk word salad. He would, point to the sound and light show and tell us that was nonsense. But he wouldn't reveal anything if people didn't have a profound understanding. And I started to, and even when we first went with the videographers, I mean, there was at least 4 film shoots in Egypt. And the first one was the interviews with Hakim. And they kept saying, I don't understand. And I'm like, look, he's not going to, you got to pretend you're a fly on the wall and let him talk to me. And then I'll make the bridges. I'll find scientists to explain things. I'll make animations, of which there's 174 in the series.
Right.
174 animations, so that it's easy for you to understand it. And then we'll choose, the punchlines that he says. Then you'll understand it. But you're not going to just understand him. There's just too much there. And they kept saying, wait. And they actually stayed an extra day. I had to come back to wherever I was going, I think Taiwan at the time. And so they went and they snuck in there and they thought they're going to spend the whole day with him. And that footage, they'd spend 20 minutes asking the question. He'd say 3 words and they'd interrupt him.
Right.
And they didn't get anything out of him. That is the most, and I transcribed the whole thing. It was just like, oh, please. So there really was a meeting of the minds.
Yeah. And
he's profound. He really, really is.
Totally. And he knew that too. I mean, he probably knew that he was speaking to somebody that wouldn't understand anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But they were supposed to be the flies on the wall, right?
Right.
Let me tell you something else. There was a real sense of urgency when I made an editing suite in my house, and I kept asking one of the 2 editors, is Hakim in the timeline yet? Because we laid all the interviews down, and then and Hakim was like the cherry on the cake kind of deal.
Sure.
And I had this real sense of urgency because, you probably noticed that he's walking in several pairs of socks and he couldn't even put his arthritic feet into shoes anymore. And so he really wanted to go. And he had heard the sound and light show, because he lives right beside the Sphinx, something like 54,000 times in his life, right? And he was just like, I can't stand it. And it's loud, the speaker right there. It's like, and the false story in the different language 3 times a night. And so...
yeah, it just must really get under his skin. I mean,
he just was done. He wanted to go.
Right.
He had, birthed 11 kids, and he was just done. He was old. He was miserable with his arthritis. Anyway, so I just kept saying, is Hakim in the timeline yet? And the editor would look at me and say, why do you care? Right? And it's like, is Hakim in the timeline? I had this real sense of urgency. And so then he says, okay, watch me. Here's the clip. I'm dragging it into the timeline. Drum roll, please. Okay. Hakim's in the timeline. And I went, oh! And 15 minutes later, I got an email from his kids that he had died 15 minutes before.
I felt it coming.
He waited till he was in the Pyramid Code before he left.
I felt it coming. I knew the end of that story.
Did you hear me say that before?
Yeah, no. But I could feel it coming. I felt it coming.
You must be intuitive.
I felt it come out. Well, I didn't want to finish your sentence, but yeah. And it's just extraordinary. And his parts of the Pyramid Code are extraordinary. And I've watched him over and over again. See, the thing is this, when it comes to Hakim, and I encourage everybody, just go watch the Pyramid Code, go find it, go get it. There's already been links up in Twitter. But when you get to the Hakim scenes, stop when he's done and rewind and listen to him again, because there's a innocence in his eyes and there's a conviction in his delivery that is, you have to stop and pay attention. And I really stress that. And I'm sure when you must go out and speak about the Pyramid Code all the time, and you must emphasize the Hakim scenes. You have to.
Oh, well, sure. But now, when I spoke at the Modern Knowledge Tour in Vancouver, I was keynote last summer, and I went through some of the archived footage and made a couple more clips. So I showed up on the podium and I said, I've brought my close personal friend to talk to you too.
Awesome.
And so I brought in some more clips that he said. So there's plenty more.
Now, let's talk about a couple of specific things, more of a technical issue. One of the, I think might be the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a couple of months, but the opening scene, I don't know if it's the second episode or the first episode, where you go to the unfinished pyramid. And
that's episode 1, the Band of Peace.
Okay, that's episode 1. Rausch. Okay, it's all one big documentary to me. It's just all one long. But that is something that the tourists really aren't brought to, because in those, that's what it appears to me. You are completely dead alone out there. Is it really that remote, and it's not accessed by tourists? And
not even close. Okay, first of all, there's no road. So there used to be a couple of oil barrels, along Alexandria Road, and you'd basically turn off and be off-roading and go along a moonscape, and go up there. And then they changed that road around and closed it. And so there's a village called Abu Raush, and you go and you ask people, where's the pyramid? Haram is the word for pyramid in Arabic, and they go, well, I don't know, what pyramid? I don't know, and they live right below it. And so, without Hakim or his kids, I had to go there 5 times before I found it again, even though I knew exactly where it was. Now, when I had to get the signed orders from the Minister of Defense for Egypt, because the Air Force owns the sky, to do the helicopter footage, and then it ended up being one of these little Gazelle helicopters, about, not as wide as a small car, no seat belts, no doors. But again, I had paid thousands of dollars to do it. So they said, we cannot fly over Abu Raush because that's where the army keeps their ammunition. I'm like, you're telling me that? So we couldn't even fly over it.
Right.
We were going to observe something. So it really is remote. And, I mean, you could never get a tour bus in there. The guides don't know where it is. And so it just sits there in isolation. Almost no one's ever been there.
The shots of you walking down the steps into, I don't want to say it's a basement, but you know what I'm referring to.
Into the interior of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Lots of pyramids have chambers underneath the ground level.
And it's fascinating to see how, and I don't know if that was the way that all pyramids were built, like they did that stuff first. I think a lot of us envision maybe the pyramid was built first and then they're digging tunnels. But to see that in real time, you walking down those stairs into the bowels of this.
It's not stairs.
Well,
it's absolute. It's flat. It's slippery. And of course, me and my little ballet slipper. Everybody say, "You really going to go and do that in those shoes?"
I've seen. By the way, you have to tell everybody about the shoes that you're wearing. I noticed that.
Well, they're just little flats because actually, in Egypt, as a temple initiate, we're always bare feet. So I was always kicking my shoes off. So I needed the smallest shoe possible because you have to have something with a covered toe, just because there's too much sand and grit and everything else.
Sure.
But walk, and it's slippery. But walk, it's very slippery. And it's actually quite smooth, that surface. But I keep forgetting. And when we're doing that filming, about 1/3 of the way down on the far right hand side, there's an incredible vortex right there. And it bends my body right in half, and it just throws me. And so I come, chugging along the next time, forgot all about it, and just about fell over. I mean, it's very strong energy in there.
Well, explain that. That's fascinating.
Well, it's a vortex. Like, there's energy everywhere, and it's a question of being able to access it and feel those points. And so even in the King's Chamber, in the so-called sarcophagus, if you get in it backwards, nothing happens. Well, that's not the same energy. But if you get in the proper direction, the point in your pineal gland is the point where all the energy in the pyramid is focused, and that's what it was for out-of-body experiences. So every pyramid has a special resonance, a different resonance, chambers in different places, and no, they weren't carved out later. That was part of the way they were constructed. But the thing that fascinates me more than anything, from up there, you see all the pyramids of the Band of Peace. There's 22 pyramids, and it's almost 20 kilometers from Abu Raush. You end up with these scatterings of 6 sites that are all connected. Well, all I can demonstrate connected to star systems. But for all the trials I've done, I've yet to figure out which one Saqqara is. But in Starry Night Pro, that's another whole subject, but the configurations hold together, so they're absolutely aligned, as above, so below.
I was just reading here on Twitter. What do you think about, and then I want to talk about the ages of some of these things, but when somebody says they're just stone monuments, there's nothing going on, how do you react to that?
Well, they don't say that. They say they're tombs, because that's what they were told.
Well, even, okay, let's say it's something simple like that, but, when there's nothing going on here.
Go back to sleep.
Yeah,
no, really. But the thing that I finally figured out how it started. Now, first of all, in Mexico, there are pyramids that are tombs, but I think they're notably not straight-sided. But the straight-sided pyramids in Egypt are all energetic instruments. And high-level initiates, and this is part of my past life memories there, that they would go through these initiations, one initiate at a time, and there would be other initiates who would support them because they would actually have out-of-body experiences, which is why this tremendous amount of crystalline focus on the pineal gland would create the conditions that would allow them to leave, because they wanted to see what was going on the other side and consciously come back, so that when they dropped this earthly garment, they would know what to do.
Right.
And so when people have out-of-body experiences now, they're like, what? Or near-death experiences. Like, wait a minute, they didn't tell us this in church. And they can be quite disoriented. So when you leave your body, the attendants were there to make sure you came back in properly and to take care of your body, because you left, right? And so when the scribes were very high-level beings, and they would write down everything that they saw going on. And so the person looked like they weren't breathing when they were gone. And so they loosely translated the word, and then you know how you play telephone and you go in a circle and everybody tells the story and whispers it in the ear, and by the time you get back to the beginning, it's a completely different story. So someone said they looked dead. So the deceased, the scribes referred to them as the deceased. Well, then somebody else came along that had no idea what the Egyptians were up to and said, well, he's dead, deceased, not the one traveling in an out-of-body experience, because in the 1900s and the 1800s, 1700s, we didn't know about that stuff. And so that just got translated. Somebody grabbed on that it was a tomb, and then that way they can completely dismiss all of the energetic stuff that goes in there. But I've done some I've got a very sophisticated measurement instrument, and I've done longitudinal studies of people with 5 different pre-tests going inside the sarcophagus right away after, measuring the effect on their consciousness. And there's really something going on in there.
What did you find?
Well, because the first time I went to Egypt in 1977, I spent 3.5 hours in the King's Chamber and in the sarcophagus and everything with one other person who got me in there. And I had apparitions in my pictures. And then as often as I could go in there, I would, and mostly by myself, and certainly in silent meditations. If anybody there was there that wasn't part of my group or, making it respectful, I couldn't stand it because it magnifies energy.
Sure.
But what I noticed over time as I integrated the energy is I was becoming more psychic. So I hypothesized that there was something about going inside the Great Pyramid, if you nurtured the energy, that could contribute to making us more psychic.
Was it almost addictive? I mean, did you want to go back and get some more? What I'm saying.
I did, but the energy in there is quite It can be distorted, and it's purest plus or minus 6 days from equinox and solstice and January 19th, and nobody's figured out why. But anyway, the long and short of it is this instrument is electro-photonic imaging. And the second term is gaseous discharge visualization. So you'll see the GDV/EPI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a machine that came out of St. Petersburg, Russia, Dr. Konstantin Korokov, and they've been working with and developing the precision of the machine for 15 years. And I was asked to speak at the conference with 440 scientists in St. Petersburg in 2012. And so what it's doing is it's measuring so if you do a pretest, well, just a neutral thing in your living room, and then you go to a sacred site and measure the person again in controlled conditions, and then measure them after. There's different ways that, so you're literally, if you can imagine a camera inside a box with the lens facing up and a cap that keeps the light out, and you put your thumb and each digit, and it sends up a little impulse, and then it takes a picture of the photonic emissions coming off your human body.
Wow! And what do we see?
Lots. And so it's based on the principle of Qi and the Chinese meridians.
Sure. And
so each aspect of the fingerprints, the fingers, it corresponds to a part of the body. But so there's a logarithm that then chug-a-chug, chug-a-chug, chug-a-chug calculates and then shows the area of your energy, and where there's gaps and where there's spikes. It's complicated. You do one test that's measuring the physical, and you do one test that's measuring the emotional, spiritual, and the difference between the two shows the direction you're moving in. And you can tell if somebody's pregnant, you can tell if somebody has cancer. I mean, it's the difficulty is the interpretation, because you can't be too quick with it.
Right.
But there's a second hold measure that's looking at virtual chakras. So it's looking at, and the glands are connected, as you learned in the Pyramid Code, to the chakra system. And so if you're displaced, and so the chakras have an energetic value, so they can be squished and tiny, or they can be robust and full. And then you can see if they're displaced to one side, it's preoccupation with self, narcissism, which our culture teaches us to be. And then, or you can be too concerned with others. And that's just one way of psychologically interpreting it. But what I was hypothesizing is that there'd be a correlation between the chakras, that there was so if it's a mild correlation, it's 1 in 100 chance that it happened by accident. If it's a moderate correlation, it's, 5 in 100 is moderate. 1 in 100 is, I'm starting again. 5 in 100 is mild. 1 in 100 is moderate. But less than 1 in 1,000 is considered strong statistical probability that it didn't happen by chance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I had miles of numbers from many people and many tests on 10/10/10, October 10th, 2010, and on 12/12/12.
Do you realize what you just said? That's my birthday.
Oh.
10/10/10.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
that was kind of weird. Oh, let me back up though. With were you going into this with a predisposition? Did you already have some knowledge on this, or were you discovering this as you went along?
No. This is an empirical study. I teach quantitative research methods to grad students, and so it's a methodology. You make a hypothesis, research questions as measured by variables that relate. And then you collect the data and you see if the data supports what your hypothesis is. And so I plotted all this stuff. So when I did it in 10/10, it really shows that we've evolved as well. And so there were mild correlations that were made, but it was connecting the chakras. And so it's almost like, how do you have 360 senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see on my website, I've actually got in pyramidcode.com, if you go to photos, you'll see the results of at least the 10/10/10 study. And so you can see how the entrainment of the chakras, so the theoretical position and the research that other people have done have to do with synesthesia and many other things as well. But how a person, it's normal and natural, but we've, dumbed ourselves down, to hear a picture or see music, or someone has flowers on TV and you smell them. And so that's something we can train ourselves to do. But what is intuition? The phone rings, you know who it is without looking at your caller ID.
Right.
They won't come when they make an appointment. You say, they're not going to come. How do you know that? Like, what are the signals that are going in, and how does one become more psychic? Well, my hypothesis was the entrainment of the chakras. And so in the post-test and the delayed post-test for the 12-12-12 study, it was a complete loop-de-loop-de-loop, and everything was relating to everything else, and it was driven off the heart chakra. And when I first plotted it and looked at that, I just burst into tears. It was just like, oh my God, there's how it happens.
When you first laid down in the sarcophagus in the king's chamber yourself, in the correct direction, how long, is it something that, is it instantaneous, or is it something that slowly builds up?
No, it depends. And in all of the cases, like I replicated the same study in a very controlled way. It was there were 80 people on the second trip.
Sure.
For December 21st, 2012. So we really had to cook to get the whole thing happening. But 2 minutes. They had 2 minutes in the sarcophagus. They got out of the sarcophagus all wobbly, disoriented, and their fingers went straight onto the device.
I've seen pictures of people before and after video lying in the sarcophagus, and you're absolutely right.
But it's not. But people don't really know how to manage the energy. So
that's my question. Yeah, that's exactly my question.
So I had consultations with trainers in St. Petersburg, and of course everything was dual language, and so the real trainer only spoke Russian, and I'd ask the questions, and then I was having trouble understanding what my data was doing. Right, so I had Skype access to them, and we made appointments. And one of them just went, and she said in Russian, and I went, what was that? And she says, how can you expect people to understand how to manage that energy? I'm like, oh, really? How naive of me.
Right.
And so it's absolutely true. I assume that if people are coming to Egypt, they have an orientation, they used to be high-level initiates, that they wouldn't bother putting themselves in that situation unless they had an affinity for it and likely understood it on some level. No, not so. And so, and for me as well, like I'd spent hours in there by myself, right? I mean, I spent 3.5 hours in the pit, in the subterranean chamber, in the dark, and it wasn't dark. So there's like loads of energy in there. I mean, dark. I mean, you see things. You see things that physically it was pitch black, but my eyes were seeing all kinds of stuff.
I've asked, and we're going to stay right there. We're going to spend at least a half an hour talking about this right here. I've asked all of any guest that has been in the king chamber or in the queen's chamber by themselves. I've stopped them right there and asked them about their personal experiences. So let's go up to the king's chamber. You're in the king's chamber yourself. Now, I'm claustrophobic. I don't know if I could deal with even getting into it, but with the weight of the pyramid above you, certainly that has something to do with energy. All of the granite stacked up on, there's energy there. What are you feeling when you are alone? What happens to you?
Well, first of all, if someone else is there and it's a magnifier or magnetic resonance chamber, whatever is in that person's psyche gets magnified too, right? So being alone is much different than being there with one person or the guide, the watchman, anybody.
How so?
Or somebody you're trapped. Well, because it's just you and your thoughts that being magnified.
Ooh.
Otherwise, it's everybody else, and you get, that's why I refuse to go in there with the general public, because they're so ridiculously disrespectful and take my picture.
Yeah, that bothers me so much.
I mean, it's a ritual.
Yes.
But I'm treating it like I remember from other incarnations. So, okay, so there's a lot going on. Now, I want to tell you about a new pyramid that was built and also about the structure that was replicated. So Valery Uvarov in, again, St. Petersburg, he knew I was going to be speaking, and he came to find me, and he showed me the methodology that he used to construct a new pyramid in the center of the landmass of Russia. And you can see it from Google Earth.
Yes, I've seen it.
So pardon me?
I've seen it.
You have?
Yes.
Okay, so the construction starts with a slightly inverted pyramid underneath.
Right.
And that's so that if there's an earthquake or anything, the rocks shake themselves closer and tighter, so it's earthquake-proof. And then they stack these crystals that are, one more thing. There's something that looks like the arms of the Milky Way, and he's made these tracks, and he used geopolymers, and he got tons of crystals, like literally, from Brazil, and used a white quartz polymer on one And then the next row, it's the arms. Imagine the galaxy. The next one's black, white, black, all the way around. And that goes under the pyramid. And then on top of that, 14-foot quartz crystals, like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was pouring the stone over the top. So in the quote-unquote dead spaces, wrong word, in between the chambers, it's not just rocks. There's quartz under pressure, and the double helix of the quartz is actually affecting our human body. It's fascinating, really. So he used that. He was concurrently with one $5 million project for crushed quartz, polymer, casing stone, and real quartz crystal pyramidion at the top. But at the same time, he was doing another $5 million project for the Crystal Spa and Lounge, they called it loosely. And, this place was, like, unbelievable. Anyway, so they took these black and white arms of the galaxy devices, whatever, and replicated them and put them inside the walls of this Crystal Spa.
Interesting. And he takes his research so serious, and I wish there was more like him actually focusing on this with pyramid construction. Fascinating.
You're not going to find too many people like him.
No, you're not. And you know exactly what I'm saying.
He's dedicated. He's got
very
decades and decades of information. And I saw these molds, and he showed me, like, before the place was just about to open, all this gorgeous marble from Italy, and each room, there were walls made out of water, plexiglass and water in the middle, and everything was multi-purpose, and, a Turkish spa. And the most impressive thing to me, when you first walked in, there was a reception desk, whatever, and the wall behind it was floor to ceiling, end to end, a sheet of lapis lazuli with a sheet of water coming down over the top. Oh.
How did you get so cool? You got to tell me, how did you get so cool? Because somewhere you went to cool school. I can really tell. If you're ever down in LA, you got to come over and hang out. I would just love to sit down with you for a day and
okay, so I'll get to my point. We went to the parking lot at the back of this spa, and he said, you have to, see this place. I stepped over the threshold into the almost finished construction zone in the back room of the spa, and I felt like I was standing inside the Great Pyramid.
Really? Same vibe?
Yes. It's this kind of whooshy, open something that, but I had spent so much time in the pyramid, I identified it right away, and I thought, oh my God, what's going on in here? Now, there's so much negative demonization of all things Putin. It's actually such a sophisticated place that he goes there, and Putin is a friend of Valerie.
That's right.
And I was going to meet him because Valerie was trying to give me so much information. He had an appointment with Putin 4 days later.
Well, that's the only way he got the construction done, too, was because of his association with Putin. Okay, well, I didn't know that part. That's what I've heard.
It stands to reason.
Yes.
But anyway, so for 3 days I thought I was meeting Putin, and then the last day, didn't work. Okay, so fine, no problem. It was just, he says, I have to go, so you're coming with me. So anyway, but this is where the cabinet ministers go. Putin goes there because they want to be clearer to help the people. And the purpose of the pyramid was built by the biggest fruit and vegetable produce company because they wanted a place to take the produce to energize it before it went on the trucks so that it would nourish the people better. And they don't have microwaves, and people think, oh, well, we'll catch up one day. No, they're so knowledgeable and sophisticated that they know they're bad for people, and so they've outlawed them. So we don't get the full story about what's going on there. And it's interesting because this happened all the time with Egypt. I'd say, everything's fine there. No, you didn't watch the news. It's dangerous. Every single trip, 28 trips since 1977. And so when I came back from Russia, I said, oh my God, I was so impressed with people, and they're just so sophisticated, and everything's so beautiful, and the architecture, and the women with their beautiful dresses and matching shoes. Don't you know the KGB is hiding around the corner? You just didn't see them. It sucks there. I'm like, when were you last there? But like when I would come with personal, information about a place, they would rather point me in the direction of the mainstream media rhetoric and make me feel bad that I didn't get the story right. Well, what's that? What is that?
Exactly. I'm up against the same thing. I totally feel your pain. There was a really cool question here that popped up on Twitter. I don't want to I don't want to segue, but it's a great question. What's your opinion on Akhenaten and Moses being the same person?
Well, first of all, it's about 1,000 years off in time.
Mm-hmm.
So it just doesn't work. And the books that, there's certain things that are unverifiable that somebody writes down and then people keep repeating it, kind of like with Sitchin. And so no, and no. Now, there may have been an exodus after Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and that's a big story, and I feel very identified with it. And Moses came later. And it's a valid story, and he did some, cool stuff and was in a reed little boat, and somebody found him, and he was raised by the Pharaoh. But not that Pharaoh.
Okay.
Sorry, it doesn't work at all.
Okay, there you go. Case closed. That's it? Done? Okay. Please ask her what she found out about the divine feminine in the Giza Plateau.
Well.
Yeah, I know that's a broad stroke of the pen, but
well, it is, and it's not just that you go there and see the feminine, but everything in Egypt in the temples is the masculine and the feminine in balance. So the papyrus is the masculine and the lotus is the feminine, and you see them in harmony. And so there's all this stuff that and the winged disc. So you surrender your lower self to your higher self as you walk into the entrance of the temple. And every hypostyle hall has the winged disc. And so the idea is that little self, little marketplace, me, myself, and I, isn't who's going in there to do the work. It's my higher self. So you surrender your lower self to your higher self. But the only way to do that, according to the Egyptians, is to balance the masculine and the feminine within yourself.
Is the magic still there today? I know inside of the pyramids and the construction, but as you're...
No. It's there. Okay, did I cut you off? Sorry.
No. Okay. And you know what I'm referring to when you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. If someone doesn't build a temple properly, you go in there, you don't feel anything. So the cavities of the human body. I mean, these guys were brilliant because they're looking at how nature, the universe, the solar system, and our human body and the pyramid are all replicating a certain kind of energy. And so the cavities, the size, the way the temples are constructed gives you, if you're aware, even if you're not aware, it's like archetypal energy. You don't have to be aware for it to be affecting you.
Right.
And so it's actually playing on. And if you see somebody who's trying to replicate, not that anybody built a bad temple, what I mean is the fresco, and somebody doesn't understand the proportions of the human body and the way they have the posture and the bands around their wrists, ankles, and upper arms, they all do something to manage energy. And so when people just draw it, like at a papyrus factory, you'll see, not factory, whatever, when they paint the papyrus, some people just don't understand that, and they're not replicating it properly, and it just doesn't work. Okay, so the precision of the Egyptians and how they did everything, and Chris Dunn, looked at all the precision in the face. He calls it Ramses, but really that was Amenhotep III, not his father.
Mm-hmm.
He admitted that to me, but he says, I'll still call it Ramses because everybody knows who he was. No, but he was in the deep patriarchal part, cutting off the hands of his enemies. But anyway, so the resonance is actually affecting you, and it takes a while to digest the energy, which is why this is a big process, and that's why you don't just go there once and get it all. You can't. So energetically you need to get it, and yes, the magic is still there.
Where did the knowledge come from? I know that's the question that everybody asks, but I certainly need to ask you where.
Let me say something more here, because you mentioned my book, Angels and Archetypes: An Evolutionary Map of Feminine Consciousness, and that's all about the research question. There was what happened between matriarchal cultures that gave way to patriarchy, and so I think that once we get over this horrible bloodbath, that we're going to come to see this era as the patriarchal hiccup, and everything else was matriarchal, which doesn't mean women will control or did control men. It means there was balance. Matriarchy means balance. Patriarchy means disconnect everything and lop off the sacred feminine and see the mess we got ourselves into.
Right.
And so I've always maintained, as well as Hakim, a lot of our stuff aligned. I mean, we knew the Sphinx was feminine, and so we were tapping into something from the same place in the ancient time, and his stuff came through verbal knowledge, not through books. And so most assuredly, the pyramids would have been built during a matriarchal phase of ancient Egypt, but it could be way back, like 50,000 years ago. Okay, case in point. Let's go to the Bosnian pyramid for a minute. And I've been there. I presented there as well at Dr. Sam's Hidden Mysteries conference. And so I've got all this huge thing of research with matriarchal cultures and megalithic stone circles and how all that fits, and, you know, Malta and the hypogeum, and it goes on. And then all this stuff with the pyramid energy. And so when I went down into the chambers underneath the Bosnian pyramid, the energy in there was just unbelievable. And there's pure water and all these characteristics. Like, there's 8 characteristic features that you have to have for it to be a real pyramid. And Sam's been measuring this energy and inviting scientists to come. He's Dr. Yes, whereas Zahi's Dr. No. And anyway, I got to go to the lab, and there were these little stones that look like the runes from my book. And if I took footage of it, and I also took footage at Michael Tellinger's museum in South Africa at Waterval Boven, and if I showed you the footage of the two, you would not be able to tell the difference. And Bosnia is not in the neighborhood of South Africa. And this stuff is so old that this is way, way back. Anyway, so my point, I saw the certificate that came from the carbon-14 dating lab. And carbon-14 notoriously makes things look younger than they are.
Yep.
And the Bosnian pyramid was dated at 38,000 years ago.
What?
What? Isn't that a jaw dropper?
Well, it is, and I've had many people on this show, and not only Dr. Schock, but James Swagger and other researchers about the Bosnian pyramid, and the jury is still out, even amongst some of these guys that we all want it to be real. And you certainly, as you're an expert as anybody. So you're
real
saying that
real can be. I know them. And Robert Schock also said that Yonaguni at the top end of Taiwan and the bottom end of Okinawa wasn't real either, but he did one dive. Sorry, I mean, I like him and all that. He's a good person.
Right.
But Graham Hancock and his wife Santha did 54 dives.
Right.
And so he just took a snapshot and said it's natural. Well, he also keeps changing the date of the Sphinx. So he even has a slide when he does a presentation. I presented at the Great Convergence on December 20th, 2012. And he's up there saying, well, 5 years ago I thought the Sphinx was this old, and 10 years ago I thought the Sphinx was this old, younger. Younger. And he's allowing himself to make it older. Well, I wouldn't put up a slide to say, well, I keep changing my mind. The date is the date.
Right.
Okay, so there's people who have just started out doing their research and they maybe didn't feel anything. But it's hardcore data. I mean, I worked with Timothy Moon and interviewed him. He said, look what I found yesterday. I'm filming him. I nearly dropped my professional camera. I mean, I spent the whole time there with my crew going, with my jaw hanging open. We went, what? Oh, the whole time, several times, what? Because it was just like completely mind-boggling. But the energy in there, and we filmed it. It's the orbs and the plasma beings. But I'll keep going here, but Timothy Moon, who's the head archaeologist there, he held up this stone effigy, and I got the camera, and he says, I've called her Medusa. Well, it's a woman's face painted on this stone with snakes coming out of her, or things that look like snakes coming out of her hair. It's not that big. It's probably as big as your thumb. And he says, and it's a left-handed culture. If you hold the stones in your right hand, they don't fit. They fit in your left hand. Well, that's matriarchal, right? Right brain dominant.
Right.
And there was a piece of bone from Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthal, whatever, 40,000 years ago, Neanderthal probably. And the first trumpet for the Bosnian Symphony Orchestra, after lots of people said, well, I guess they didn't really know, it had holes in it. It was a small bear bone, a young bear bone that was carved to turn it into a flute, right? Or whistling device or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these people tried to play it, and they couldn't get anything else. Well, I guess they didn't really know music. This guy put it in his left hand instead of his right hand and got 4 octaves out of it. And I got film of him playing.
When I watched the footage of both Schock's dive and some of the stuff of Hancock's dive, those look to me to be man-made. I don't see. I understand how it could be, and Shaka explains it in a very intellectual way, but he hasn't drawn me in enough to convince me that.
No. And he made that decision so quickly that I don't know if he can retract it. He retracts the date of the Sphinx, and so he has to live with that. Because when we were at the Bosnian pyramids in the Hidden Mysteries conference, people kept saying, yeah, because he just poo-pooed the whole thing. But so has mainstream media. They basically said to Dr. Sam, you are the caretaker. We trust you to preserve this. And the mainstream media is always going to say there's nothing there. That's the deal.
What is it that convinces you that the Bosnian pyramids are, aside from the vibe, is there an architectural side as you're walking?
Yes. There's water underneath. There's a network of passageways that follow like a honeycomb pattern. They're straight-sided. There's 4 courses that they so far excavated that are the layers. They're aligned to north, south, east, west solstices and equinoxes. There's a magnetic resonance field. The list goes on and on. But I also felt it. I'm going to give you a case in point. I knew I was filming, and I didn't know. I didn't get funding, so I thought, well, I'm not missing this opportunity. So I brought my fancy camera, big fancy camera, and I didn't bring my water bottle because I didn't know how long we'd be in there. You have to wear a hard hat, and so I'm carrying the camera, and it's like 2 hours later. I'm like, oh my God, my kidneys are getting, restricted. I'm getting dehydrated. The camera's getting heavy. My back is killing me. And we get into this chamber, the real healing resonance chamber. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I felt myself stand up straight. The pressure came off my kidneys. The camera was light as a feather. And I'm like, where are we? And then I found out that 14,000 times the negative ions had been measured in that room. But there's another thing. There's a whole series of these man-made huge stones that go 50 tons, 100 tons, 200 tons as you move forward in these tunnels. This is something else. This is really incredible. And so it was actually all the speakers from that conference that were with Dr. Sam on a special tour. And so we stood all around in a circle, and then we hunched down and put our hands about 7-8 inches above this stone. And there's crystals inside. They've x-rayed it. And so Dr. Sam says to me, okay, Carmen, hot or cold? What do you feel coming off your hands? I said, cold. Cool. He goes, I feel warm. He says, that means you feel more comfortable when you're slightly cool than when you're slightly hot. I feel more comfortable when I'm slightly warm. Maybe he explained it after. We went all the way around the circle. Cool, warm, warm, cool, cool, warm, warm, warm. So these stones were giving people what they needed. And it was different for everybody. It's like, what?
Huh.
It went on and on like that.
Well, that's interesting. And I've also heard about the energy and stuff that is coming off of the top of the pyramid, too, as well.
That's right. And it gets stronger the further away you go.
That's right.
Well, and Philip Coppens had been there the year before, and he passed away. He was supposed to be on my Egypt trip and went from diagnosis to death in 3 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and, talk about a magic thing. I was sitting there one day, and I heard bloop on Skype. And so I pick up my iPad, and I go looking through all the messages. Yeah, I've seen that one, I've seen that one, I've seen that one. And holy man, Philip, from the other side, wrote me a 53-line Skype text message.
Shut up. Really?
It gave me all the science, the who, what they were measuring, how it worked, all perfectly spelled so I could look things up. And I had just dragged over from an email that was quite old in my inbox, a video of Dr. Sam with all those names. I'm like, what is this? How is this possible? I mean, it's mind-boggling, totally. And there's absolutely no way. And it was date that it was there before, and it was date and time stamped the last time I spoke to him on Skype. And we were talking.
Wow,
he couldn't have typed it.
Wow.
Okay, and when he passed, he went straight to be with Hakim. And in between, my son passed away, tragically. And the three of them are together, and they do these tricks, and they each have their own signs. So this business of communicating with the other side, gone, not gone. Like Hakim, he would, especially at the beginning when he first passed, he'd come and put his spirit face right in front of me and go, wake up! And he'd start talking to me. Like, so this is real. It's measurable. It's truly happening. The signs are real. Like losing my son, I didn't really lose him. And so they're working. together on the other side. And I accept this. It's weird isn't weird anymore. And what Dr. Sam has found and the science, well, he sent me this video not long ago, and it was Eric von Daniken down inside the passageways under the Bosnian pyramid. And as they're having their conversation, and all these plasma beams are flying around them. Well, if you take a still shot, that looks like orbs. But if you take a video, they're flying around. They're moving at different speeds. They're different energy fields. And they love it down there. They gather where the energy is pure.
Back to, speaking of Bosnian and it being 38,000 years old, you make some, and I'm in agreement with everything that you've said, by the way, in Pyramid Code. So,
thank you.
But
I thought I was way out on a limb.
What? Hey, you know what though? I think that we're going to find as time goes by, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15, whatever, that you and Robert Bivall and other researchers out there and Forrester, all of you, that you guys are right. And at some point, we're going to have to reprint an awful lot of books. Okay, it's going to take a little bit of time, but just relax. I think you're spot on. So with you had mentioned 38,000 years for the Bosnian pyramids. When we're referring to Giza, this is my take. I want your response. Some of this I've stolen directly anyway from your documentaries, but I think the pyramids were already there. Okay, when the dynasties came about, 3000 BC, 3500, they were lucky. Somebody already did the building for them.
They did a renovation. 2450 BC was the last restoration, renovation, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing is that we haven't named it. In the Pyramid Code, they show you a long timeline that takes you back. But it has to do with the precessional cycle. And because that carbon-14 date that came from a lab said 38,000 years, that doesn't mean that's the final date, because carbon-14 is notoriously plus or minus 2,000 years, plus or minus 10,000 years. If you were measuring the organic material from a campfire from 100 years ago, it would be plus or minus 2-3 years. But the further back you go, the more the error factor comes in. So it really needs to be photoluminescent dating or, that sort of thing. And so there's new dating techniques, but the labs are full. They don't want anything to be older than 6,000 years. So even if things could possibly be 1 million years old, the lab in Peru will say, we're not going to charge you for this, and it's, 5,700 years old, because the academics will not allow anything to be older than 6,000 years officially. And so with Dr. Sam and Timothy Moon, they independently took the sample and took it to the lab and paid for it and got the date. There was no middle person, no academia. And so, but I think they're older. I think that carbon-14 makes everything look younger. And so it would most certainly have been all dating back to a golden age in the precessional cycle. So whatever, 52,000, 39,000, somewhere in there. But my point, when you asked about where's the feminine consciousness on the Giza Plateau,
right?
This is matriarchal, feminine, left-handed culture that is feminine consciousness in its fullest, in balance with the masculine. So everything from angels and archetypes, evolutionary map of feminine consciousness, bridged everything in the Pyramid Code. And you're not going to find too many people talking about that, but I'm on YouTube because I was part of the press conference, the 2013 Hidden Mysteries Conference, and I said it. And J.J. Hurtak was sitting right next to me, and he had some, pretty amazing things to say too. He wrote the Keys of Enoch way back in 71 or something?
Yes.
And so, there's something going on there, and it's palpable, and people can say there's nothing to it all they want. And these are big circles intersecting here.
With my opinion is, if I built the Great Pyramid, if I was the dude that built that, I'd graffiti it. I would. I'd put my name all over it. It would be covered with just out of pride, and it's not.
Well, that's patriarchal.
Is it?
I'm the king of the castle, and it's mine. But that's not what they're for. And you said, well, where did all this come from? And so I will credit Valery Uvarov again. He wrote a book called The Pyramids, and he asked me to, write 4 episodes of documentary, and he had funding supposedly from the lady who built the crystal spa, and then in the end that didn't happen. But one of the things in that book, he talks about the third-party hypothesis. And so this is the answer to the question of where did all the information come from? Because, the Mayans talk about certain things, and the Egyptians and the Hindi Indians and all that. And people have similar knowledge, but it doesn't, there was transatlantic travel, and cross, cultural interface between them. But everyone seems to have the same knowledge. And it's my conviction that the higher level energies came when Atlantis was still pure, and they were the wise ones, if you will. And just the way we channel now or connect with, a higher level being or our higher self, they were working with beings that were far more refined and etheric. And just the way I'm saying we can see these plasma beings, these are beings that are somehow densifying themselves or hanging on to some kind of something here to show themselves. And it's becoming measurable. Like, this stuff is like, when you think about, behind the Iron Curtain and the psychic stuff, and we have the devices to measure and film these things now. And so when we knew that Atlantis was going to go down for the third time, right? Just the way we're predicting asteroids and stuff, and maybe mainstream people Main Street people don't have the information, but, we're getting a little bit more sophisticated in terms of seeing these things coming. And an asteroid smashed into Russia not that long ago. And there's things like comets that turned the sand into this green glass that King Tut was buried with a pendant with it. And so there were evacuation committees that had time to organize, and there were decisions that were made. And I come with this with quite strong conviction because I remembered this stuff in 1973, and someone else came and said the same thing. And I still am in daily contact with this person from 40-some years ago, because we remembered being on the same committee. And she took me to my first past life regression, and I was like, oh my God. And so, this is, again, stuff that we've kind of, kept to ourselves all these years, but I think it's time for it to come out. So what were they going to do? And so the decision was these evacuation committees would leave and go and colonize places on the earth and probably build these straight-sided pyramids. Now, another interesting fact is, or I haven't checked it, but I know it's true for some places. If you take a knitting needle, go straight through the Great Pyramid, through the globe, and come like through the center of the earth, you come out the other side at Haleakala on the Big Island, the volcano. So there's someone who just sent me a bunch of their research, and if you take any of these straight-sided pyramids and go straight through the center of the earth, you come out at a volcano.
Interesting.
And so, that's undeniable. Get your globe out and make sure your needle's straight and see. These are verifiable, okay? And so if that's the case, then there's something about the latitude, the longitude, the star system. There's pyramids in China, there's pyramids in the Philippines, in Greece, in Italy, in Antarctica, in Alaska. It goes on. And under the ocean, Bimini, it goes on and on and on, where these pyramids are being found recently, and they all fit together. So why couldn't, and of course we wipe out and say Atlantis is some kind of mythology. Is it? Or are we just not allowed to talk about stuff that's that old? Because we're only 6,000 years old and the whole thing's a patriarchy, right?
That's right.
History's when the soldiers came to end. There's always been war. No, there has not always been war. I beg your pardon. Anyway, so I think that we lived quite sophisticated lives, and we were, a little bit ethereal, and we could fly around and use our body double, and, telepathy and levitation, and so that's anti-gravity and manifestation. All that stuff's normal. We're the ones who are dumbed down. They had 360 senses. They were real cool, magic, yeah. Okay, and it was practice. It was discipline. Now, that doesn't mean everybody on the planet was like that. There were still farmers, tending the fields. But there was a whole bunch of wise, high-level initiates that trained themselves into being able to do all this stuff. And I remember. That's why I'm who I am now.
Very cool, like I said earlier. Hey, Carmen, if we drove a needle through the Bosnian pyramid, are you saying that comes out to a volcano too as well?
I don't know. I didn't test it. I mean, it's one of these emails that, people send me all these emails, check my theory, and it's like, well, that can take a whole lifetime. So,
okay.
But at first, anyway, it's true. And Hakim used to say this about the big island in Hawaii. And then there's all that stuff on Easter Island and blah, 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 blah. So I say it's all connected on some level, and it could be that it was a unified field, and that Atlantis would have been a worldwide culture on every continent. It's just that the main city on the island of Poseidon went down and to be not seen before. But the Azores, the Canary Islands, lived in Madeira, which would have been right there.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been one of the mountain peaks.
Mm-hmm.
Portugal off the coast of Africa. So all of this actually fits together, and it actually makes sense. Third-party hypothesis means that all of those different cultures that had the same story didn't talk to each other,
right?
But they all had the same third-party connection. Well, to me, that's an aha, right up there with the scribe wrote the word that sounded like the deceased, and everyone, it's a tomb. It's not hard to lose our way. And even with Sitchin, Mike Heisner took a PhD in linguistics. I also have a PhD in computational linguistics. So I understand this corpus linguistics and collocations and how you can take all the information of a whole book and then look for where the words appear together, and that's what the computer can do for you.
Sure.
And so Mike Heisner's, and nobody had a degree like that to see if Sitchin was right, okay? And so you can see where these words appear together. And so he took Nephilim, Anunnaki,
right.
Gold, Enki, Enlil, and said, where do these words appear together?
Right.
Of the Sumerian texts. Guess what the answer is?
None.
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
And so Sitchin, I met him, and the thing is, when he was doing his talk, and people said, well, what about, it's in my book. What about this? It's in my book. And he it's like he couldn't remember what he had written. And his office was in the Rockefeller Center.
Oh, don't go there. Are you going there?
No, wait. And people keep repeating it. And the thing is that we've been enslaved for 450,000 years. And if you listen to some people talking, they're going to tell you that Enlil was 450,000 years old. Well, we have trouble that Moses was 900 years old. 450,000 years is a pretty long run for one body. And then people I call them Sitchinites. They keep repeating and repeating and repeating, but it's unverifiable. So we've got to be really careful because it's attractive, because if we've been enslaved for 450,000 years, that means we're not enslaved now. And it's like, well, then there's no matriarchy, then there's no balance, then there's no time ever on the planet where we weren't warring. And just can't buy that. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. I've got 80,000 questions now. I was so focused 5 minutes ago. I was doing pretty good.
You're doing pretty good now, too.
Somebody just tweeted, what happened to the crystal capstones on the Giza pyramids?
Oh, well. Okay. I've had a question about that, too. It would have only been on the Great Pyramid that's missing. And, okay, I consult with, people who are channeling some pretty high beings, and the answer to that, I know it was there at some point. And when I'm talking the ancient initiations, we're talking a long time ago. And the message that came back, and I don't know how to check this, was that they were there, the crystal capstones were there, which is probably why Valery Uvarov put a crystal on the top of his new pyramid.
Right.
But the energy was turning. The negativity and the evil, for lack of better words, was coming. And the pyramidal energy could have been used against us. So in some ways, it was decommissioned. And so the crystal capstone, here's the quote, went into the etheric plane. So it was still accessible by the high-level initiates, which couldn't see it anymore. Ordinary people couldn't see it anymore. And in some way, that makes sense to me.
Explain it like I'm 4 years old.
Well, okay. We're trying to piece this huge story together. So there are things. Manifestation is pulling something from another dimension, and then it's in your hand. And I've had these experiences, and it's spooky as can be. So there is parallel reality. There are parallel realities, and as we become more refined in our 360 senses, which is the full spectrum senses, come back into operation, like a muscle that you use again.
Right.
It's possible to see into other dimensions. And things can return. You ever lost something and then it pops back and you look there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, things can pop into another dimension and pop back here. And so it went into the ethereal, into the etheric plane. It became non-physical. But we were also physical, non-physical. Like, we are so dense right now, and we've been told that if you can't see it, it's not there. That's one of the rules of patriarchy.
Right.
It's, angels, ha, ha, ha.
Right.
Past lives, ha, ha, ha. Well, past lives, they made it illegal. They'd burn you at the stake if you thought there was such a thing as past lives. They made reincarnation illegal. Well, and we're not that further ahead here. We're making homelessness illegal.
We all know reincarnation is real. It has to be. It has to be.
We recycle everything else. Why can't we recycle our souls? But to the Egyptians, just normal.
Oh man!
Have I upset you with all of that?
No. It's just having a guest that speaks clearly and makes sense in my own beliefs is it's reassuring. It's really, I feel good right now, and I was in a good mood coming in. I'm in a real good mood now. You need to come hang out when you come down to LA. We're gonna let's do a hang.
And if you're here in Victoria.
Absolutely. You heard about
and we can do this again too.
Yeah, you heard about my last trip to Victoria.
Yes.
Oh man, I'm on a hit list up there. Okay, there's one of the things that you talk about, and you know what? You want to take some phone calls? Are you
sure,
game?
But you're getting the tweet questions.
Yeah. Oh, those. I can't even keep up with Twitter. I just glance and grab the latest one that went by. Oh, actually,
I think those are good questions because.
Are you watching? Okay, there was a question that's been up here for a little bit, and it's been re-asked. So just let me get it out. Do you believe in Egyptian curses?
No. There are physical explanations for those things, like the mummy bandages actually had some kind of a bacteria or a virus, and they inhaled it, and so it makes for really good movies and really good drama. Well, I mean, I think that there were magic spells, but I think they were overwhelmingly positive, and it's only when the densification happened and the patriarchy came in to play that it started to have an evil kind of twist to it. So to me, that's a story from our times.
There's a few things. Okay, I've got a call coming in. There's a few things that remain in legend. One, the emerald tablets. Two, what's going on underneath the Sphinx. Libraries, knowledge, tunnels, chambers, a paw, and so forth with the Sphinx. And I would like to try to get to all of that. Let's just grab the first call. And
don't forget those questions.
I know. Oh, I
good
won't.
Things to say about those.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with Carmen Boulter. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hi, it's Keith. I'm in Jersey. You guys, great show. I just wanted to add Telstra Malioni, who wrote A Woman of Wisdom. She talked about she lived in a Buddhist monasteries and went around yada yada in Tibet, and she would say that she experienced a time when all the monks were out collecting all these sort of multicolored wafers during a festival that were emanating from a statue. And when she went to the villagers and said, "Did you not see what was going on?" None of them experienced that. However, the monks did. And it's the same concept that what you're talking about. It's just that there's this sort of dimensional thing that some people experience and others don't. And I just thought it was very relevant to your conversation before.
Thank you. And the lack of perception of people who have not trained themselves to see or who are denser doesn't mean it's not there. We owe it to ourselves to become more refined. Then we will start to see those things.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with Carmen Boulter. Who's calling? Where are you calling from? Say hi to Carmen.
Hi, Carmen. Hi, Jimmy.
How are you?
It's Carol from Medicine Hat.
Oh, hi, Carol. How are you?
Hi, Carol.
I'm good. Hi.
Carmen, I've read a bunch of your stuff and seen a bunch of your interviews, and I'm just totally I'm so happy that you're on tonight. I've been learning so much, and I think I saw a pyramid, or I think I found a pyramid here in southern Alberta. I don't know if Jimmy has told you about that.
We haven't had a chance to talk about it yet, but I'll tell.
There's a pyramid in southern Alberta?
Yeah, she sent me a bunch of photographs. Yeah, there might be. She sent me a bunch.
I thought Alberta was the only place there wasn't a pyramid, Carol.
And you know what? With Carol's permission, I'll forward the photographs that she sent me to you. Your analysis would be extraordinary on it. It's pretty interesting. You have to see it for yourself. But she sent me, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen pictures. Let
me say this. If these pyramids were built pre-flood, and the flood happened with the sinking of Atlantis, then there would have been layers of silt and earth over the top of them. Then they would have seeded and had trees. And this is the thing in the Bosnian pyramids and any of the in China, that the heights of the trees isn't the same. So if you go down to the roots, it is a straight-sided pyramid, and they are excavating in Bosnia. But when you look from a distance, if you don't get the angles right, it doesn't look straight-sided. Well, that's because the trees are different heights.
Thank you for the call, Carol. I will forward your photographs to Carmen. Yeah. I would love to get her input.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Okay. Have a great night. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with Carmen Boulter. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Jimmy. This is Broder F. Disc out of Dallas.
How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you and your guest?
Say hi to Carmen. What's your question?
Hi, Carmen. You were talking about the Blue Lotus and a process by which they used it to make some sort of something. Can I get some more details on that?
Go on YouTube and type in sacred weeds, blue lily, and you'll see the experiment that I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the shortest way to say it.
I studied alchemy under Hans Menzel, so that should be interesting. I put another question under the Twitter, but it was basically, in my initiation process, it always felt like I was going to another time and place. Is that your experience? And I'll take my answer off air.
Thank you. Yep, you go somewhere else. You go off planet, and that is just normal. That was normal for the Egyptians, and so a lot of the ceiling of the Temple of Dendera, not the round zodiac, but the first hypostyle hall, is basically showing the beings. They are tracing where they came from, and they're conversant in this if you know how to interpret what you're looking at. Over long periods of time.
One of the fascinating things, and I say this all the time, and it makes me sound like a doofus, but it's just the way that my brain works. When you look at the zodiacs that are on the ceilings throughout Egypt, I don't see Capricorn. I don't see Scorpio. I don't see that. I see the star clusters. But it kind of refers back to what you're saying. Everybody was communicating with each other across continents.
No, they're there. The thing is it was really hard. I mean, these pictures have not been unpacked. I've got a full professional shoot and film of this entire ceiling, and right. I've been analyzing it for a long time. And you will see the zodiac there, absolutely.
No, I'm saying
they're all moving. They're moving through the body of Nui, with her fingers touching and their feet touching the ground, and the phases of the sun going through her body. So she would swallow the sun at night and give birth to it in the morning.
Sure.
And so it's there. But I want to make a clarification that the round ceiling in the temple structure at Dendera was taken and replicated by Napoleon, and the real one's at the Louvre. And this one's just a horrible mess in Egypt that's flaking away, and you can see it was really poorly done. But
it doesn't look that bad.
That is not the round zodiac of Dendera. That is a misnomer, just like the so-called King's Chamber was an initiation chamber.
Right.
The correct name for the round zodiac is the calendar of catastrophes, and it pinpoints the exact date where the flood happened. And there was a legend in Atlantis that said when the head of the crab hits the heart of the lion, which means the constellation of Cancer would collide with the constellation of Leo. Well, duh, that's not going to happen because the zodiac isn't supposed to shift around.
Right.
But that was the level of the impact of this asteroid that knocked the axis of the Earth from straight up and down to 14 degrees. And then they had to replot where everything was. And the exact year of that, and Graham Hancock will say, around 10,500 BC. And he's right. 13,600 years ago.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Oh, I think this is Dino. Hi, Dino. How are you tonight?
Hi, good evening. Hey, by the way, I was told decades ago by Gavin Arthur, an astrologer and mystic, that he was in the Pope's chambers in the Vatican and that he was able to see the zodiac on tiles around the Pope's bath. Interesting. But just the other thing I wanted to mention, I have another friend who's in his 70s now that was kind of a world adventurer from California when he was younger. He sat in the King's Chamber, and I asked him, he's written a couple of books, but I said, well, what happened to you? He says, well, it's in my book. I had a voice, and I wasn't clear whether it was his own voice or another outside voice, but the voice told him as he meditated, he sat in a yoga position, and it said, you heal leaders. And it was interesting because when he came into my life, my mother had died, and I was feeling kind of listless, and some people have called me a leader. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this is a question for you, Doctor, is this whole concept that we mentioned a few minutes ago about things appearing and then disappearing. And I had read that years ago that when you lose your car keys, it had something to do with a wormhole or something sometimes that, you looked everywhere. And then maybe the next day, then all of a sudden they appear. So I'd like to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Thank you,
Well,
Dino.
I didn't. I thought, thank you, yeah. I think it's more like little nature spirits that are just playing games, and you can hear them giggling in the background. And it's a function of manifestation. Now, we know that Sai Baba, when he would manifest a Rolex watch or whatever, it would come with vibhuti. So he would manifest this powdery dust. And literally things are dematerializing from the other dimension and rematerializing here. But I always think it's kind of like the cosmic piggy bank, I call it. So that if you get something manifested, then something else has to be given back. And sometimes it's just temporary. But I've got loads of stories about how I've experienced that. So literally dematerialization, it's rematerialization. So it's not unlike Beam Me Up, Scotty. And all of these abilities are from the transmutation of the atom. And what the pyramids were doing, they were multi-purpose as well. And they were blowing the oxygen and the hydrogen molecules out of water. And harnessing the microwaves and the hydrogen, which is hydrogen power, is something that we're becoming more familiar with. But we are made of water. So the transmutation of the atom happening within our cells when we're connected to the cosmic fields and to our higher selves is the same thing as, the Star Trek dematerialize, rematerialize in the other place. So an object can dematerialize and rematerialize somewhere else. And again, to me, that's kind of normal.
Kind of?
Kind of.
Okay.
I don't have too many peers that can do it, but and you can't do it on demand, like a new Ferrari, please.
Right.
Because that's for the ego, and that's where I think the secret, oversimplified things, because people thought, well, I want $100,000 in my bank account. Well, it's not supposed to be for you. And the high-level initiates, if they manifested something through a group, fields within fields within fields, and it landed in someone's hand, and they went, oh, I want this, I'm taking it for me. Well, then you can't do it anymore because you lower your density because you stole something.
Right.
And so it really was just like a team sport. Like the team wins, the team loses, somebody catches the ball, but somebody handed them the ball. It's the whole team thing.
MG just tweeted, she said, my remote control must be in another dimension.
Exactly.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with Carmen Boulter. Who's calling? Where are you calling from? 3, 2. Okay, there you go. We started to talk about, and you said, don't forget, and I won't. Let's talk about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
Okay. Philip Coppen's wife, Kathleen McGowan, has a little box of relics, and I did the Sacred France trip with them. And she claims to have a piece of the skeleton of Mary Magdalene and a piece of the Emerald Tablet, and a piece of the veil of Mother Mary. And they're in this little box. She doesn't claim. She claims that's what they are. So the last day before we left Paris, I was sitting in a small group, and she passed this thing around one at a time. And I held this thing. It was ostensibly a piece from the Emerald Tablets. And it was like a magnet in my hand. And I knew that there were other people, and I had to hand it over. But it was so energetically whatever I'm trying to say. It was like two really strong magnets, and you kind of can't get them apart.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
My hand was the other part of it.
What did they look like? Can you describe them?
Well, it's a small little piece of carved green stone, and it wasn't as big as your baby fingertip. But it was so strong. And so I really thought there was something to it. I felt there was something to it. So again, what's verifiable, and who's Thoth, and what are the Emerald Tablets? So I tend to think that there is some knowledge and wisdom. I'm not sure that they're correctly translated in every instance. And I think that it's tapping into some very old, deep knowledge.
Where do the translations come from? I have tried to research and come up with something accurate, verifiable.
Exactly.
So where
I don't think you're going to find it.
Right.
Okay. This is where I say there's a certain amount of discernment. And the thing I forgot to say about the Medusas, the chapter in my book on Medusa was a switchover from matriarchy to patriarchy. Well, I also have a chapter on Hestia, and she's the ultimate discernment person, right? And that's where the Olympic flame came from, where the mother would light a torch in her hearth and take it to her daughter when she got married and lit the fire in her daughter's new place. And discernment is what we need to learn to ascertain if something's bullshit or not. And so my experience that I mentioned before of standing in the temples and overhearing a guide when I was by myself and feeling like I was going to pass out is a definite no. But tingling and the rush of feeling good because you're hearing something that resonates well with you and makes you want to watch the Pyramid Code again, because that's the most common comment, is as soon as I finish it, I watch it again and again and again.
Mm-hmm,
and so that means it's resonating. And so that's, okay, so if you use a pendulum or divining rods, it's either going to be open, which is yes, or closed and crossed, which is a contraction, which is no. And so we need to, because let's say 85% of everything that's channeled or everything that's on alternative media is right. Well, where's the 15%, and how do you tell the difference? And we need that, because otherwise you're blindly believing, and as I say, you become a Sitchinite.
Oh, man. Well, okay, we've mentioned Sitchin a few times tonight. What is it? Are you saying that he was all wrong? Is that where you're going?
Nobody's going to be all wrong. But the thing is that in Inanna, there were goddesses. It wasn't just a fight between two brothers, and it wasn't just about gold and enslaving us. These are little bits of code that confuse us. But like I said, it's all about us always being enslaved. No, I think we're enslaved now by the system. But I don't think we always have been, certainly not 450,000 years ago.
Right.
So I think he took his liberties, but there's a purpose to that. And there's some kind of an appeal to the story, and people like to believe it for some reason, but I think we have to unpack the pieces. And he's gone now, so we can't check with him. But I did try to go deeper and figure out where he was coming from. But he said he was getting everything from the Sumerian texts. But, okay, different languages have different turns of phrases for a preposition. For example, in China, they sit in a chair, and we sit on a chair. Okay, they don't do feminine and masculine, so they'll often call a woman he, and they don't do it in Chinese. And Chinese verbs don't conjugate, it's to go. Then you add a qualifier, later, yesterday, tomorrow. So when you're translating out of a foreign text that is not known, that lots of people aren't doing because it was a very rare thing, it's really easy to get to say at instead of in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But that changes the meaning altogether.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And him instead of her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's incredibly precise, and if you make a slight mistake, you can get carried off into another world. And Michael Heisner with a PhD in ancient languages, has caught Sitchin in a couple of turns of phrase. The other thing is that half the tablets in one country and half the tablets in the other. So are you really getting to the bottom of it? I saw the Dead Sea Scrolls and the real ones, and it's teeny little fragments. And so if you wrote a letter to me, and, several thousand years from now, we had 8%, are we really going to get the meaning of the letter?
Right.
So somebody fills in the blanks, and it usually has an agenda that suits the whoever. So we have to be really careful to tune into ourselves and to use that muscle called discernment. And it's up to us to say no or yes, and not to jump too quickly, because anybody who does conspiracy theory is just throwing the whole thing out.
Did you see, you're looking on Twitter, did you see this image of the emerald tablets?
Actually, I'm not on. I'm totally focused on the call. I'm not looking at the computer.
Okay, no big deal. But when I look at this, anything like this that is out there is totally, it's from the imagination.
Okay, again.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
My understanding is that the CIA has 35,000 agent provocateurs that just go around and look at sites and make ugly comments on YouTube things and try to distract people from something that's there. There's a lot of forces, like most of what we see on mainstream media isn't true, a little bit is, and then you flip it around to alternative media, it can't all be true. And so how do you tell the difference? But who is putting a downer on it or being, rude or negative about something? I think we have to understand what we're facing, because the powers that pretend, don't want us to figure it out. So they do everything to compromise our ability to reason this, and they make us be born into families where nobody believes anything. But it's harvest time for the black sheep.
What, with all of your friends, where do you think these emerald tablets are today?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
I have no
they
idea.
certainly exist. We started to talk about the paw, the library, the knowledge. What is going on with the excavation there?
Oh, it's okay. First of all, it's Loctite. They cemented over the whole thing. There used to be a temple of Isis down there, and I spent a lot of time inside the body of the Sphinx as well. And now they've gone in there and renovated, if you will, and it's not what it was. But the energy in there was really profound. So there's an inner chamber of the heart of the Sphinx, and then there was an entrance on the left back rump with a wiggly ladder that was really quite terrifying. And so I got to feel the energy, and every time I was inside the Sphinx, I wouldn't sleep for 72 hours. And that's a long time. But I'd download all these light codes, and I couldn't unpack them, and that's another kind of story. But it was affecting me in such a profound way, even more so than the Great Pyramid, in all honesty. And so I had a feeling that there were passageways that kind of went left. And I had a vision of a certain place in Egypt way back as a child. And I kept going back and going back and going back and trying to find the place. And, I understood you're getting warm, you're getting cool. And when I went to Upper Egypt where the temples are, it's like, you're really cold now. And so I knew it was somewhere. And I spent 5 years on the plateau at sunset when they closed it to everybody else, in and out of the holes and all those passageways, to the extent that I could. 5 whole years of that. Got really dirty, ran into bats and red fox and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Big adventure. Anyway, so then Zahi came along and paved over the whole thing. So if anybody was going to go and do an excavation now, they would hear jackhammers and machines and trucks and stuff. So there was a thing with a Polish team and Bill Brown, and he was taking a video, and it was on Project Camelot, and they're excavating. Well, I was right there.
Right.
And I was staying right across the street from the Sphinx gate, and I could see right in there. And my friend's shop is right on the plateau inside the gate. So, I was there all the time, like full time every day. And so what was happening, and this is actually a really good thing, because I've maintained that the Nile used to run right in front of the paws of the Sphinx. And now it's migrated 8 miles to the east. And the division between Cairo and Giza is the river, but it's way far away. And 8 miles is quite far for migration. But the water table's still underneath. And Dr. Sam will maintain that every pyramid has a source of water deep in an aquifer underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So what was happening is the water table was starting to come back up, and the sound and light show chairs are right there. And so at night they were going and they were piling sandbags so that the water didn't spill into the seats. I mean, it was completely fantastic that the water table is showing itself, but it was not about anybody finding anything down there. They couldn't. It's cemented over. I can show you. But the thing is that this video was at night with a couple of lights with a bunch of machine sounds into the dark. There is absolutely no way to see that it's Giza. It may have been, but nothing was happening. And you don't see, the shadow of the pyramid or anything, or like the difference between the night sky and the violet hour and the edge of the pyramid.
Right. That's interesting.
And so if you watch it, it's like, how do you know you're in Giza? And there's no way they would have to close that gate and jackhammer for weeks. And that's not going to happen. A. B. Go back to another thing with Joseph Shore. And I happen to have met his wife recently, who has, his ex-wife, and he's recently passed away. Well, she's tracked down real Blue Lotus, and that's another story. And that's the only time I've ever heard of anybody finding the real stuff. Anyway, so there was a whole thing with John Anthony West and Boris Sayed and this big expedition, and they filmed it, and they were using a sledgehammer and an instrument that would measure, the vibration, and they were moving around, and Zahi was standing there, and they were just thunking. Can you imagine? I mean, is that a sophisticated instrument, a sledgehammer? And then they drilled down a little bit, and and they tried to say the cavity was right there, where Edgar Casey said. Well, sorry, I don't think so, and it's not square, and I don't know that instrument's refined enough. Okay, if they think that's what it is, no problem. I don't happen to. However, in front of the Sphinx, okay, we say Giza Plateau, it's not flat. There's all kinds of different heights, and the second pyramid is not as tall, but it's on a higher piece of land, so from some angles it looks taller. We go through that on the pyramid code.
Right.
In front of the Sphinx and beneath the left paw is the place I was looking for 10 years, the Sphinx Temple, which is one of the most protected and guarded places on the planet. And of course, I got in there late in the night with Champion's nephew, maybe son, yes. And when I slid down this sand dune, for lack of better ways to say it, and got on the level of the floor of the temple, kicked off my shoes in typical form, and when my foot, like I've been going around going, nope, for 10 years. Nope, this isn't one. Nope, this isn't one. Nope. And then my foot touched the ground, the stones on the floor, and it started to run like a movie. I could smell the flowers. I could see the priestess robes, and I felt like I was home. And then there was a wall, and I got all excited. I went, around that corner, there's going to be a small door. Went around the corner,
small door.
3-foot door was
Really?
there. I'm like, oh my God, I found it. And so what that was, this is my conviction, this is the story as I have come to understand it. Again, well, it's not verifiable, I suppose, but the door was there. So a little 3-foot, and it was closed with a metal plate, but it wasn't like a door for a 6-foot person to walk along, right? And I think that the high priestess would initiate the 8-level initiation to go to the 9th level, and they needed the human contact of the high priestess. And so the initiates would come in procession into the initiation chamber of the second pyramid, which used to be the main pyramid. They considered it to be more sacred than the Great Pyramid, which most people don't say. And the high priestess lived inside the Sphinx temple, and she would literally electromagneticute anybody who came, unless it was a proper initiation. And so this door would open, little magic carpet rides, abracadabra.
No kidding.
Ba, ra, ka.
Right.
This was an Egyptian thing, and there's a way to levitate on these silk carpets, open up your field and move faster, close your field and slow down. And she would go in a separate passage underneath the Grand Causeway and meet the initiate in the chamber inside the second pyramid. And literally, do an energetic, I don't know if it's laying on of hands or point energy fingers at chakras, and the person would go to the 9th level. But when it's almost like plug into the wall, you know?
Right,
it's a good
right.
lamp, but it doesn't work unless you plug it in.
Right.
And this is like plugging into a higher level of energy, which is why the High Priestess was so protected, because people could get electromagnetic-cuted if it wasn't careful. But after this, telepathy, teleportation, bilocation, manifestation, alchemy, all of this was possible.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
It does. It sounds like a movie.
Okay, but if we did the movie, every reenactment I've ever seen when they're trying to talk about ancient Egypt, they're all hunched over. They had to be standing with this incredible perfect posture, or the energy would fold them and it could kill them. And that's what the scribes were for. So they would do the initiation starting at the Temple of Isis on the Nile at the root chakra, and learn different things. You know, Kamambo, they had to swim with the crocodiles, and to face their fears and digest it. It's all the chakra system going up the chakras and the glands, and the crown chakra was Giza. And once they arrived there, they had to be trained, because the whole band of peace was patrolled by the temple cats and the telepathic, and they would patrol so that nobody from the populace that weren't trained would come into this energy field, because this was really strong. This is where they were levitating the stones and using sound and light technology like the Tibetan monks still use with their big horns, and doing these kinds of processes. And if the initiates weren't prepared, they would die. And that's what they could just short circuit because the energy was too strong, just like blowing a fuse.
This question just came in. This is from Renee in Arizona. She says, of all of the pyramids or earth mounds in North America, which is the oldest, and how old is it?
Well, I don't think it's old or younger. I don't think the earth mounds are the same situation at all, and they could be burials as well. They may have a similar purpose, but they're from a completely different era, which came much, much later. And so, like I was saying before, the possibility of the Atlanteans, knowing that in 13,600 years ago that there was going to be some kind of a thing, that they would have gone and simultaneously built straight-sided pyramids all over the planet. Some of them went home, some of them stayed and colonized, they shared their knowledge. So I think most of these pyramids are going to be roughly the same age. Now, there are new ones, and there's step pyramids, and there's fake pyramids that don't have, not fake, but, modern ones that don't have the energy. And John Burke was somebody who looked at how the seeds would, either the pyramids are active or they're not. But the active, straight-sided pyramids that are distributed all over the planet, I think probably are around the same age. Hakim and I kind of rested with the 52,000 years ago, which is why I think the Bosnian pyramid is one of them, but may not have been correctly dated. I mean, we're crippled, We don't really have the tools or the will to get this story, but I think we're getting closer. And the other thing is that the energy in the Bosnian pyramid was decommissioned. Somebody wanted it not to get wrecked, or they didn't want the energy to flow. And what Dr. Sam's been doing for the last 9 years is excavating and getting all the rubble that they put in there to stop the energy. And the energy still works, but nobody could get in there. Just like Göbekli Tepe, which is right on the Iraqi-Syrian border in the south of Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also decommissioned, and it's also round temples, 22 of them at the top of a hill with no evidence of anybody living there. And Klaus Schmidt, who's also departed, lots of people leaving, he'd say, we don't know what this is. I don't know. We find all this red, white, and black stuff. I don't know what it's for. We find all these spiral. I don't know. Everything's round. I don't know. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one word would be the answer to all those questions.
What's that?
Matriarchal.
Okay.
Because
Well,
the spirals, the red, white, and black, Virgin
Yes.
Mother Crone,
Yes.
and you're not going to hear anybody else so far. The Great Pyramid was white, the Second Pyramid was red, and the Third Pyramid was black, and that's replicated at Dashur. They even call it the Red Pyramid and the Black Pyramid, and then the two-sided bent pyramid is, you can still see that it's white. And that's in the pyramid. Do I sound like I'm quoting the pyramid code?
Yeah, totally. Have you been to Göbekli Tepe, by the way, Carmen? Have you been there?
I was on my way there in October 4th, and I was refused I wasn't allowed to get on the plane.
Why?
Well, they said something with my passport. I got a new passport. Then they said something with my visa, and they just ate my ticket and left me standing there. So that's the kind of thing that's happening. I was flying out of the States. Perhaps it wouldn't have happened if I'd flown out of Canada. I was meeting a friend in Seattle, and I never went. But the day I would have landed, October 4th, was the day they announced boots on the ground from Turkey in Syria. And so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I was protected.
Did they give you an explanation?
No.
That's interesting.
Well, they tried to say that my passport didn't have 6 months left on it. It had 5 months and a couple of days. And if your passport's valid, your passport should be valid. And a lot of people that I've mentioned that to says, what do you mean? Now, I did hear that, and I thought February 15th, 2015 was plenty far away.
They just took your ticket, and that was it?
They just took my ticket. That was it. They wouldn't hear anything of it. If I wanted to fly the next day and I managed to get a new passport, it was going to be $2,500 more. They just ate the ticket and kept the money.
What?
And then I went to the Canadian consulate, and bulletproof glass everywhere, and they took $400 from me and made me wait till Monday. This was Thursday. Got the stuff together for them on Friday. You can't fly before 5 o'clock Monday. I actually had a group waiting for me, a very small group. And they swiped my ticket, or my passport, and they said, you need a visa. It's like, no, you can't get a visa. You can only get them there. And they went, no, you need a visa. Well, and the Egyptian embassy said, we'll never give you a visa because you're from North America. So all the Australia and those countries don't need it. If you're from Somalia or some country in Africa, it takes 2 months to get the visa. It's possible. You're never going to get one. United Arab or Emirates Air just said, nope, goodbye, ate the ticket.
Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to the good doctor, Carmen Boulter. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Well, it's got to be Star 6, and I don't know where I'm calling from. I'm out here in the universe somewhere. Doctor, how are you this evening?
Good, thanks.
Doctor, I've been fascinated with your work for a number of years. Currently in the last couple of years, and I've got a bunch of people around me that have been following you for a lot longer than that. I had one particular question. That is, currently there are little discoveries by the most incredible people. I mean, you might compare them to amateur astrologers. They're looking for things that they never looked for because of your works, actually. You're making them aware of other phenomena. Did I word that correctly?
Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very much. And, of course, Jimmy, I got to go. I'm busy out here in the universe getting ready for an interview someday somewhere. Bye-bye.
I'll talk to you. Yeah, I would definitely say that you make people nervous. It sounds to me like the customs agents there had seen the pyramid code. Hey, if you know what I mean. I got this question from Demiana, and he says, my skin has a golden glow, and I'm shrouded in a silver blue bubble. I've never met an entity in another plane that could contend with me, demonic. How would you interpret my aura?
Demonic?
That's what he says.
Well, that's a whole different energy. So the demonic energy and the Satanist stuff is all residing in the lower astrals. And that's what the ancient Egyptians were trying to overcome. Because if you didn't understand how to get into the higher realms, then you'd get stuck down there and you'd meet all the monsters. And so it's, like if we were to look at someone's auric field, if it's gold and blue and white, that seems to indicate that it's a higher vibrational level. But like ghosts that will open and close doors and, do things in a house that's haunted, if you will, those souls didn't make a successful journey out of here. And that's what the Egyptians were practicing, so that they would go beyond that. But if, the ceremony of the weighing of the hearts, if your heart was heavy and you'd done things and hadn't understood, they didn't want you on the other side. So that's why the populace had to live well. That's why they did so much discipline. That's why they studied and practiced going to the other side. So you can't just say, this is who I am, this is what happened, without examining it, feeling it, meeting the person. So I couldn't possibly answer that without meeting this person and trying to ascertain what it was.
Sure. Is there a general combination consensus with gold, silver, and blue?
The manuscript that led to the Pyramid Code, when I did research at various institutions in Egypt, was called Out of the Blue. And Hakim used to say, it comes from the blue. And of all the temple walls, they always pick 4 colors for each temple. And cobalt is always one.
Mm-hmm.
And Hakim to his dying day, said, we don't know where the blue came from. But he says everything comes from the blue, and that's kind of the sky. But it's more profound than that, and that's a bit of a mystery that we still have to crack. So blue and silver and gold, the Aka cord connecting our Ka, which is our body double, is silver. And the soul, when we go beyond the Ba, which is the part that lives on after we, is gold. And there's ways that we stay tied to our physical bodies, and a clairvoyant person would be able to perceive the silver and the gold and the energy of blue.
One last question, and by the way, thanks for hanging for a little bit late, but now this is a question, this is for me, indulge, and it'll be the fun one. When we're asked to swallow a few different, not a few, maybe 9 or 10 different facts when it comes to the Great Pyramid. The first, probably the most obvious one, is in 3500 BC, while the rest of the world was running around, with clubs, that they cleared out, acreage of and leveled a stone platform to support the pyramid that was accurate and correct on the compass. And then to turn around and, 2.5 million rocks were carved and placed in, 90 seconds each over 20 years, which is insane. But, and the tunnels are perfectly straight and carved, and the King's Chamber and the granite and its accuracy and its resonance. And I can go on and on. There's so many things that are just phenomenal for us to swallow and accept at a period when man wasn't able to do that, period. It's just insane.
But even now, we don't have the technology to take the pyramids down, never mind build them.
Bingo. I thought, I actually thought that thought the other day. How long would it take us just to move, with all of our...
The thing is when you say carved, that's and bringing them all from Aswan. I mean, they tried to do that. They tried to replicate that on the Japanese on rafts, and they kept, sinking, and it didn't work, and it took them a long, long time to build a pyramid that had 13 stones in total, never mind 2.5 million. And then Zahi made them take it down because it just didn't reflect things at all.
Right.
But I go with Joseph Davidovich's work, who's into geopolymers, and this is what Valery Uvarov used, that they're poured stones.
Yes.
And they used to use natron to mummify later because it would leach out moisture. And so it would take 80 days to dry a body with the natron inside it. But someone gave this fact or fiction, who knows, but that we don't have a lot of natron on the planet. But there is a place where it comes from. Want to know where?
I would love to know.
Mars.
Say what? Okay.
What? I know. So there's a lot of jaw-dropping things I'm saying here, but I got one more thing that I wanted to touch on, because this in the Pyramid Code, when you see the body of the Sphinx, and to the left there's temple pillars below. I actually made that as computer art years and years and years ago, because I've been computing since 1982 and using Photoshop since 94. And so I made that as per a vision that I had. And I kind of thought, because of the picture I have from the Temple of Isis from 1910, where you just see the tops of the pillars, and that was also destroyed right there on the plateau, that it was at Giza. But inside all those passageways all those years, I'm like, is that really where this is? So the penny dropped a couple of weeks ago, where somebody who'd been on one of my trips sent this thing from Hawara, and they said that there was like a mud brick pyramid over the top, but there was a granite pyramid underneath, and they called it the Labyrinth. And there was this whole code that was, and they said there's 3,000 chambers down there on 2 levels, and it's somewhere in the vicinity of a pyramid that's 90 kilometers from Cairo. And I just like, oh my God, that was just the way you're hot, you're cold, you're warm, you're, with looking for this temple. It's like, it wasn't at Giza. It was somewhere else. And so, of course, they were doing some stuff, and Zahi shut them down. And as I said, Dr. No. I mean, the chances of doing viable, research in Egypt have been next to nil. And I was supposed to meet one of the ministers from the Department of Antiquities on this trip that got aborted. And they are trying, because they're showing on Times Square. You can go to Egypt and they've done this Google virtual tour of the plateau. And Robert Boval just contacted me today to say that they've released, now you have to buy an extra ticket, but you can go between the paws of the Sphinx and in that whole enclosure, whereas before you could just look down into it. But I spent a lot of time down there, including with the Cairo Symphony Orchestra when they unveiled the restoration of the Sphinx, and I was at the rehearsal, which was really fun. Anyway, so I don't know if they're going to open up enough, but tourism for the last 2.5 years has been operating, well, probably longer than that, but operating at about 5% of what it was.
Sure.
People are really, really, really desperate. And that whole revolution was about food prices going up by 60%, but a couple of years before they went from a fixed rate of 3.14 Egyptian pounds to the dollar, and then it jumped up to 5.9, which meant the value of their money went in half, and food prices went up by 60%. Well, and the other thing is you hear the people living on $2 a day. No, the family was living on $2 a day.
Right.
Well, now, what do you got? 50 cents left.
50 cents, yeah.
Well, a family living on 50 cents a day, they weren't rising up because they wanted democracy. They were rising up because they had to feed their families, and a cabbage costs more than 50 cents.
Sure.
And so they're so beaten down because, poverty is a form of terrorism in a way.
Is it safe?
Right, but you know what I mean. It really hurts people.
And it's safe to be a tourist in Egypt, wouldn't it be? I mean, you're the very
safe,
fabric of...
The thing is, it's safe. Like, there's nobody going to run after you with a gun. It's perfectly safe, and they're perfectly innocent. But they're so desperate that they run after you. Lady, buy this, money, lady, money. And she's like, no. MC, you're trying to get rid of them, right?
Right.
Speaking Arabic. And they're like, they just need you to give them something, and they see us as the source of money. But we don't have any money either anymore. So whereas I had like 121 people registered for the 12-12 trip and a year in advance, and that dwindled down to 80 when it came time to pay up, this time I had maximum 13 possible and ended up with 5. People just can't afford it anymore.
Right.
And that's not that long ago. So everyone's being brought to their knees with more and more demands on finances and less money coming in, and the system's just sucking us all dry.
Well, also, I mean, with Discovery Channel and History Channel and National Geographic and all of that documentary money that was funding research, has that completely stopped over there too because of the supposed dangers?
Well, the supposed dangers, but I mean, ever since 77 when I first went, they're saying, no, you can't go there, you can't go there. And I'd get there and go, what? There's nothing going on.
Right.
But slowly, it's become more and more difficult for people, and they're getting poorer and poorer as we are. But it's been going on for longer there. So it's not dangerous as much as it's desperate. And so so Zahi would, like I remember they were going to do an examination of the DNA of King Tut with Scott Woodward from Utah, Brigham Young University. So they got the whole National Geographic team. They spend money on everything to get everybody in place. They're just about to film, roll them. They're going to go get the DNA out of Tut's tooth or something. National security, stop everything. Well, Zahi did that over and over and over. So he'd say yes to people initially. I would go to their meetings with them, and they'd give all their data and everything, and he'd say, yes, give me more data, yes, here's the date, yes. They'd get over there. He'd shut them down. He'd keep the information, and 2 years later, he'd come out with it as if it was his discovery over and over. I'd write it down like a clock. 2 years later, yep, and then he'd say it was his discovery. That's corruption.
Do you guys speak today?
No.
At all? Okay. That's a direct answer.
He's not in office anymore.
No, he lives here.
I was supposed to meet the new minister. I didn't meet the new minister, but I mean, he was getting paid $250,000 or $200,000 a year from National Geographic, and he insisted on being in every single documentary.
Right.
He was actually supposed to be in the Pyramid Code, and I kind of went,
I think he lives here in L.A. now. I don't even think he lives in Cairo. Now, before I let you go, what in the Pyramid Code, and everybody's going to be watching it tonight, and I want them to thoroughly enjoy it. Out of all of the sites that you go to in the Pyramid Code, 2 questions. 1, what is your favorite? And 2, which is the one that nobody goes to that you think everybody should be aware of? And whether
Dendera, definitely.
Dendera?
Dendera is off the beaten path. If you just go and, throw a dart at a map and at a tour guide, whatever, they don't usually take you there. That road was closed for something like 15 years, and you'd have to go in a police caravan twice a day kind of deal. And so, but the ceiling was only cleaned maybe 3 years ago, and so that hasn't hardly even been spoken about or interpreted. So Dendera for sure, because there's the old hospital there, the sanatorium they called it.
Right.
All the healing rituals were there. It was, a festival temple for feminine consciousness for the priestesses, and birthing chambers. Horus supposedly was born to Isis there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's a lot, and there's the temple underneath that almost nobody's talking about.
And which is your favorite? I like your cosmology episode. I don't know if that's what number is that?
Yes, that's definitely my favorite one.
Oh, that's your favorite.
No. The Empowered Human. The Empowered Human is my favorite because, is that what you're asking me? What's my favorite?
Yeah.
Episode?
What's your favorite? I like the cosmology. Number 4.
Well, fine. I'm deeply embedded in all of them, but
right.
I like the Nefertiti Akhenaten story and the jewelry at the beginning of it, the sheer beauty of, and I like the track of the original score that it starts with. So that's my favorite.
Oh, there's one thing that you talk about. I can't believe we're at the end of the. Oh man, when you talk about
the end of what? The end of our time together?
Yeah, we're at the end. We've only got a couple minutes left, and you talk about the vases and all of the stuff that that has been recovered and ignored, and how it was made. And I just can't believe we didn't get into that too as well, because when you talk about we can't do this today, well, it's kind of obvious. But how is it possible to make those jars and vases and things that really there's tens of thousands of them all over the place, but to make it with such precision out of such hard stone back then doesn't make sense.
Because they had machine tooling, and Chris Dunn has amply shown us that. You see the machine tool marks. And so, listen, they were operating with a much bigger deck. They were far more sophisticated. They had star knowledge. They were flying around all over the place. They understood things so deeply, and because it's been relegated to 2450 BC, we think they're, like when you said it, when everybody's running around with clubs. That's not it. And the other thing is, if, let's say it was them and they had all the star knowledge, and the planet was hit by an asteroid and everything was knocked off kilter, so then there was 365 days in the year instead of 360, they would have to plot things out again and start over. But if that happened to us in the winter in Canada, and we had an EMP thing and it knocked out our grid, we couldn't stay in our houses. We'd have to go and find a little cave somewhere where we lit the fire, and we'd have to start counting where the Sirius is rising, and, we'd have to start over. Well, that doesn't mean that the day before we weren't using our smartphones, but they don't work anymore. So we're starting over. So we're, wearing our little bear skin and trying to make a whistle out of a bear bone. And we're starting over. It doesn't mean we're not smart. And this caveman thing has, men dragging women around by their hair. I mean, all of this is some fake story that they've shoved down our throat. Quite frankly, I'm sick of it.
It all started, really, all of these stories that we're talking about, all of this academia that we're talking, it's only 150 years old.
Exactly.
Based on... I don't want to make light. It's so funny every time.
It's not even 150. 1910.
Yes.
When archaeology started, when Freud started, they were all the old boys club with their Darwin and their cigars and no women.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Easy on that. I'm still a guy.
It's true. but the old boys club.
But it is, and it's funny to me how it just hasn't changed, and we're basing everything at. It's not like there was some secret knowledge that explained all of this that is 3,500 years old.
Listen, Champollion knew he was wrong. Darwin had problems and rewrote the introduction to his book. There was an agenda then.
Certainly.
And Freud was talking about all kinds of stuff that didn't turn out to add up much, and they were all together.
I got to say it one last time before you go. How did you get so cool? You got to come down and hang out with Rita and I one night. The next time you come to LA, please, the invitation is open, And I would just love to sit down and talk to you one-on-one. Thank you so much, Carmen. I had a great time tonight. I know that everybody enjoyed it. They just said, this was way too fast. You have to come back. So the invitation is open. And if anything breaks, if you've got anything going on, please let us know. Oh, are you speaking anywhere? Do you have any engagements going on?
Well, I'm really trying to cool it with that and travel. Since I had trouble last time, I'm a little shy of that. But I did agree to do the Modern Knowledge Tour next summer in Vancouver and be keynote again. But that'll be it. And I am looking to do a crowdfunding Indiegogo campaign to put out the second series, because if we leave it to the networks, then they're going to make it an untruth.
And all of that is all of that available over at thepyramidcode.com?
No, nothing's posted there at the moment, and I'm just brewing it up. But I am using interactive-u.com, and that's my new online learning and social action network, and we're just about to launch that. And the Pyramid Code and Exotic Egypt, which deals with all the Blue Lotus stuff, are 2 courses within that. So I can meet people in virtual reality and discuss some of these concepts and help you understand more of this.
Thank you so much, Carmen. You have a great night. And again, if you need us, contact me. We'll get you right back on. All the best.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Had a great time.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. I say it at the end of every night. The website that she was just referring to, it's interactive-u.com. Interactive-u.com. You've got to go check that out. It's interactive university. And go check that. Just go check that out. Her other site is thepyramidcode.com. Dr. Carmen Boulter. Thank you so much. I encourage everybody to watch The Pyramid Code. It's 5 episodes. I don't know how long each one is, but they're all absolutely extraordinary. I watch them all the time. I do. As a matter of fact, when I was talking to Carmen the night before, I watched all 5 back to back. I watched all 5, and it was called Synchronicity. The next day I got an email, hey, Jimmy, you got to get her on. I was like, I just watched it all last night. I think I'm going to do just that. That's a great idea. That's how it happens. If you do have a suggestion at all, anybody. Oh, by the way, I got a text during the show. I think by tomorrow we're going to make a huge announcement. And, future guests. I can't say anymore. We're going to work it out tomorrow. But prepare to have your mind blown. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Expanded Perspective. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Viteau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Graphics by Method. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro by Spaceboy. Everybody head over to faders.org. Need to raise a little money. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow, Jason Martell, right here on Fade to Black. Everybody be safe. See ya.
Wow.